Imagine lacing up your skates on a crisp Canadian morning, the rink alive with the roar of a cheering crowd. Now picture that, unbeknownst to you, the very month you were born could tip the scales of your entire future in hockey, and, by extension, in life. This isn't the stuff of urban legends or tall tales. It's a real phenomenon that Malcolm Gladwell dives into headfirst in Chapter 1 of Outliers, aptly titled The Matthew Effect. In this chapter, Gladwell dismantles the myth of the self-made genius and reveals how seemingly trivial advantages snowball into life-altering success. Welcome to the world where being just a few months older can be your secret weapon. Setting the stage. The cold, hard truth of Canadian hockey in The Matthew Effect. Gladwell opens with an eye-popping account of Canadian hockey, a sport that epitomizes the American love for competition and teamwork, but hides an uncanny quirk: the cutoff dates for age-class competitions. In Canada, where hockey is almost a religion, the eligibility date is January 1st. This arbitrary line drawn on the calendar means that a child born on January 2nd is almost a full year older than a child born on December 31st, even though they're grouped together on the same team. Gladwell paints a vivid picture of a typical hockey team, the Medicine Hat Tigers, whose roster reveals a disproportionate number of players born in the first few months of the year. As he details the team's lineup, listing birth dates in place of player names, the reader is struck by a bizarre, yet inescapable pattern. Nearly 40% of these elite players hail from January through March. This isn't merely a statistical anomaly. It's a window into how small, seemingly insignificant advantages can set the stage for extraordinary outcomes that at its core. The chapter challenges the notion that success is solely the product of individual talent and hard work. Instead, Gladwell argues that the environment, timing, and sheer luck of being born at the right time play a monumental role. When coaches scout for talent, they inadvertently favor those who have already benefited from being slightly older, more physically developed, and, therefore, more capable on the ice. This systemic bias creates a self-reinforcing cycle. The early-born kids get better coaching, more practice, and ultimately, more opportunities. In short, success breeds success, a concept that Gladwell borrows from the biblical adage, "For unto every one that hath shall be given." 2. The anatomy of a cumulative advantage. The phenomenon Gladwell describes is known as the Matthew Effect, a term he borrows from the Gospel of Matthew, which states, "For unto every one that hath shall be given." In the context of hockey, and by extension, life, this means that those who start off with a slight edge receive additional opportunities to build on that advantage, while those who lag behind fall further and further behind over time. Consider the young hockey player who is born in January. By the time he's 8 or 9, he's not just playing against his peers. He's competing against kids who, on average, are less physically mature. His early exposure to competitive play means he gets noticed, invited to elite, rep teams, and provided with superior coaching and resources. Every extra practice session, every high-intensity game, compounds his innate abilities. Over the years, this initial advantage snowballs. By the time he reaches his mid-teens, the gap between him and a kid born in December isn't just a matter of a few months. It's a chasm filled with accumulated experience, refined skills, and bolstered confidence. This isn't just about physical prowess. It's also a matter of perception. Coaches, scouts, and even parents tend to interpret early signs of ability as markers of future potential. In a culture that idolizes the self-made individual, it's easy to overlook how much of that success is preordained by circumstances beyond one's control. Gladwell's narrative forces us to confront a humbling truth. The playing field isn't level at the start, and the opportunities to excel are unevenly distributed based on arbitrary factors like birth date. 3. A closer look at the hockey example. Gladwell doesn't merely state the facts. He brings them to life with compelling details. He takes us through a play-by-play account of a hockey game where the players' names are replaced with their birth dates. Suddenly, the game transforms from a contest of athleticism to a showcase of statistical inevitability. The narrative becomes almost poetic as the dates pass, the puck from one to the next, reinforcing the idea that the system is rigged from the start. This clever device highlights a crucial point. When we measure talent or success solely by the outcomes we observe, whether it's making the varsity team, excelling in a sport, or achieving academic honors. We're often ignoring the underlying structure that paved the way for those outcomes. The hockey rink becomes a microcosm for society at large, where arbitrary cutoffs and systemic biases can determine who gets ahead and who gets left behind. Moreover, the hockey example serves as a powerful metaphor for the broader concept of accumulative advantage. It illustrates that success is rarely the result of a single, monumental effort. Rather, it's the outcome of a long, incremental process where each small win builds upon the previous one. The early-born hockey players don't suddenly become stars overnight. They earn their stripes through a series of incremental benefits that, collectively, set them on a trajectory for greatness. 4. Beyond the rink. Broader implications of the Matthew effect. While hockey provides a striking visual representation of the Matthew effect, Gladwell is careful to extend the concept to other domains. He argues that the same principles apply in education, business, and even in the arts. In schools, for example, children who are born earlier in the academic year tend to perform better on standardized tests, not necessarily because they are inherently smarter, but because they are more mature than their younger classmates. This slight head start leads to placement in advanced classes, which further enhances their academic performance, a vicious cycle of advantage. Similarly, in the corporate world, individuals who start their careers with a slight edge, perhaps due to better education, more supportive networks, or simply being in the right place at the right time, often find themselves on a trajectory toward leadership roles. These advantages, though seemingly minor at first, compound over time, resulting in substantial disparities in income, opportunities, and recognition. That Gladwell's argument forces us to rethink our cultural narratives about success. The archetype of the rugged individual who rises to the top purely through grit and determination is deeply embedded in American mythology. Yet, the reality painted in the Matthew effect is far more complex. It's not enough to work hard if the deck is stacked against you from the very start. Recognizing the role of systemic advantages compels us to consider the fairness of our social institutions and the policies we take for granted. The human element. Stories of struggle and serendipity. One of the most captivating aspects of this chapter is Gladwell's talent for blending rigorous statistical analysis with engaging storytelling. He introduces us to individuals who, on the surface, seem like natural-born leaders or prodigies. But as we dig deeper, we see that their success is as much about luck and circumstance as it is about innate ability. For instance, think about that kid who gets picked for the elite rep team simply because his birthday falls in January. His journey is punctuated by a series of serendipitous events, better coaches, more practice time, and the confidence that comes from early recognition. Each of these elements, while individually modest, adds up to a powerful cumulative effect that propels him far ahead of his peers. In contrast, consider the equally talented child born in December. Despite having similar natural gifts, he misses out on these early advantages. His relative immaturity is mistaken for a lack of ability, and he's overlooked by coaches and talent scouts. Over time, the gap between him and his January-born peers widens, not because he isn't trying as hard, but because the system has systematically deprived him of the same opportunities. Gladwell's narrative is a call to recognize these disparities, not to excuse individual effort, but to acknowledge that the structure of our systems often determines outcomes more than individual merit does. It's a provocative idea that challenges the meritocratic myth and encourages us to look at success through a wider lens. 6. Rewriting the narrative of success at its heart. The Matthew effect is a challenge to the conventional wisdom that success is simply a matter of personal grit and talent. Instead, it posits that our achievements are deeply intertwined with the context in which we are born and raised. Gladwell's argument is clear. By focusing solely on individual effort, we overlook the broader, often hidden forces that shape our lives. This revelation has profound implications for how we think about education, talent development, and even social policy. If success is largely a product of accumulative advantage, then our societal structures might be inherently unfair. It begs the question, how can we level the playing field so that every child, regardless of their birth month or the arbitrary cutoff dates imposed by the system, has an equal shot at success? One potential solution, as hinted at in the chapter, is to rethink how we organize systems, whether in sports, schools, or workplaces, to account for these natural disparities. For example, in hockey, instead of lumping all players together based on an arbitrary calendar year, leagues could consider grouping players by their birth quarters. In education, delaying the formation of ability groups until children have matured could help reduce the self-fulfilling prophecy that advantages the early born. Such ideas may sound radical, but they stem from a simple truth. Our current measures of merit are deeply flawed if they ignore the hidden advantages that many take for granted. By recognizing and addressing these systemic biases, we can create environments that are not only fairer, but also more conducive to genuine talent and hard work. Point 7. The ripple effects. From ice rinks to life, the implications of the Matthew effect extend far beyond the boundaries of a hockey rink. They touch every aspect of our lives, from the way we educate our children to the opportunities available in our careers. The chapter challenges us to rethink the notion of individual success and to appreciate the cumulative impact of small, early advantages. For instance, in the realm of education, the chapter highlights how the relative age of a student can influence academic performance. Teachers may unwittingly favor older students in a class, mistaking their maturity for superior ability. This not only affects academic tracking, but also shapes the self-esteem and long-term prospects of millions of young people. The same pattern emerges in sports, business, and even the arts, where early recognition often leads to a cascade of opportunities that reinforce one's initial advantages. This ripple effect is central to understanding why our society often idolizes the self-made individual without acknowledging the fortuitous circumstances that paved the way. It's a humbling reminder that behind every success story lies a series of coincidences and systemic factors that are rarely given their due credit. Point 8. A call for rethinking opportunity. Ultimately, Gladwell's exploration of the Matthew effect is more than just a statistical analysis. It's a call to action. It challenges policymakers, educators, and sports administrators to re-examine the criteria by which success is measured and rewarded. If we're serious about creating a more equitable society, we must start by recognizing that the deck isn't shuffled evenly at birth. This chapter compels us to ask tough questions. How many potential stars are overlooked simply because they were born at the wrong time? What can we do to ensure that talent isn't wasted because of arbitrary cutoff dates or ingrained biases? And perhaps most importantly, how can we redesign our systems to nurture every child's potential, regardless of circumstances beyond their control? Gladwell doesn't offer a one-size-fits-all solution. Instead, he lays the groundwork for a broader discussion on how we define and nurture talent. His narrative forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our society's obsession with individual achievement while ignoring the structural factors that make such achievements possible in the first place. Point 9. Conclusion. Uncovering the hidden layers of success. By the end of the Matthew effect, readers are left with a paradigm-shifting perspective on success. It's not just about natural talent or relentless hard work. It's about the fortuitous timing of one's birth, the benefits of an early start, and the systemic advantages that compound over time. Gladwell's engaging prose, filled with relatable anecdotes and sharp insights, transforms a complex statistical phenomenon into a compelling narrative that resonates on a deeply human level. In this chapter, we learn that success isn't a level playing field. It's a staircase where each step is built on small, often overlooked advantages. Recognizing this isn't about diminishing the value of hard work. It's about acknowledging that even the most dedicated individuals can be held back or propelled forward by factors beyond their control. And in doing so, Gladwell not only redefines our understanding of achievement, but also challenges us to imagine a world where opportunity is more evenly distributed. Imagine a young kid in a small Midwestern town, spending countless evenings in a dimly lit rec room tinkering on an old computer, his mind ablaze with possibility. Now picture that kid, through sheer persistence and an almost obsessive commitment to practice, eventually transforming the entire digital landscape. This isn't a Hollywood montage. It's the real-life journey that Malcolm Gladwell dissects in Chapter 2 of Outliers. The 10,000-hour rule lays bare an astonishing truth. It's not just raw talent that catapults people to greatness. It's the relentless, cumulative grind of practice. In this chapter, Gladwell argues that approximately 10,000 hours of dedicated effort is the threshold for achieving world-class expertise, whether on the hockey rink, in a music conservatory, or in the high-tech corridors of Silicon Valley. Setting the stage, the American dream meets relentless practice in the heart of America. The self-made man is revered. We idolize stories of grit, determination, and the willingness to work harder than anyone else. But in the 10,000-hour rule, Gladwell turns that narrative on its head by showing that even the most seemingly natural geniuses owe their success to a hidden, cumulative process of practice. It isn't enough to simply have a spark of genius. That spark must be fanned into a roaring blaze by thousands of hours of deliberate, focused work. Gladwell opens this chapter by introducing us to a world where opportunity, timing, and relentless effort intertwine. He shows how extraordinary achievements aren't born solely out of innate brilliance. They're earned over long periods through the accumulation of practice hours. This isn't just about putting in the time. It's about how that time is spent. The concept of deliberate practice emerges here, a process that isn't simply repetitive or mindless, but is designed to push one's limits and continuously improve performance. Point 2. Bill Joy and the Computer Revolution. A case study in practice. One of the most compelling illustrations of the 10,000-hour rule is the story of Bill Joy, one of Silicon Valley's legendary figures. Bill wasn't born a computer genius in the traditional sense. Instead, his journey into the world of computing began in a moment of serendipity. When he first stepped into the newly minted computer center at the University of Michigan in 1971. Just 16 years old, Bill was a lanky kid with a mop of unruly hair, more comfortable with his nose in a book than out on the football field. Yet, the moment he discovered the vast, white room filled with massive mainframe computers, everything changed. For Bill, that room wasn't just a place of learning. It was a playground, a battleground, and eventually, the launching pad for a revolutionary career. From the moment he got his hands on a keyboard, Bill immersed himself in a world where every minute spent coding was a minute in pursuit of mastery. Gladwell details how Bill's commitment wasn't driven by a natural, effortless genius. Instead, Bill's journey was characterized by countless hours of practice, fueled by curiosity and an unyielding desire to push the boundaries of what was possible. As he worked through the long hours at the computer center, Bill's skills grew exponentially. Every bug he fixed, every line of code he wrote, and every challenge he overcame contributed to the accumulation of those critical 10,000 hours, a threshold that, according to Gladwell, is essential for true expertise. Bill Joy's story is a microcosm of a broader phenomenon, that success in any field, be it computing, sports, or music, requires an almost obsessive dedication to practice. It isn't enough to simply show up. You must commit to a routine of deliberate practice that stretches your abilities and gradually transforms you into an expert. Bill's journey reminds us that what often appears as raw talent on the surface is really the result of long-term, cumulative effort. 3. The science behind the hours. Research on deliberate practice. Delving deeper, Gladwell turns to academic research to bolster his argument. He draws on the work of psychologist K. Anders Ericsson, whose studies on musicians provide a scientific basis for the 10,000-hour rule. In one of Ericsson's seminal studies at Berlin's elite Academy of Music, violinists were divided into groups based on their potential to become world-class soloists. What emerged was a striking pattern. The top-tier musicians had accumulated roughly 10,000 hours of practice by the time they reached their 20s, while their less accomplished peers had logged significantly fewer hours. Ericsson's research dismantles the romantic notion of natural talent. Instead, it reveals that the difference between an outstanding performer and a merely good one isn't a mystical gift. It's the relentless work put in over the years. The study showed that from a young age, when every musician started playing around the age of 5, the initial differences were negligible. But as the years passed, those who practiced more diligently began to pull away from the pack. By the time they were in their teens and early 20s, the gap had grown into a chasm, measured in thousands of hours. The concept of deliberate practice goes beyond mere repetition. It's not about mindlessly logging hours. It's about structured, focused effort designed to improve specific aspects of performance. For musicians, this might mean honing technique, mastering difficult passages, or working with a coach to identify and overcome weaknesses. For athletes, it might involve drills that target particular skills or conditioning routines tailored to enhance performance. And for computer programmers like Bill Joy, it's about tackling progressively challenging problems, debugging, and learning new programming paradigms. Gladwell emphasizes that deliberate practice is a double-edged sword. It demands patience, persistence, and a willingness to embrace discomfort. It's not glamorous, it's grueling. But it's precisely this type of work that separates the extraordinary from the ordinary. The takeaway here is clear. While natural ability might open a door, it's the sweat, persistence, and thousands of hours of effort that pave the way to lasting success. Point 4. Beyond music and computers, the universal applicability of the rule. Although the story of Bill Joy and the research on musicians form the backbone of this chapter, Gladwell makes it clear that the 10,000-hour rule isn't confined to one domain. From sports to business to the arts, the principle applies universally. Consider the world of sports, where coaches often speak of grinding practices, extra drills, and the countless repetitions that polish raw talent into championship-level performance. In sports like basketball, baseball, and even hockey, as we saw in Chapter 1, the pattern holds true. Those who make it to the top have usually put in significantly more practice than their less successful peers. Take, for example, the phenomenon of elite athletes who seem to burst onto the scene as prodigies. Their success is not merely a stroke of luck or an inborn ability. It's the result of years of structured training and preparation. Gladwell notes that in many cases, what appears to be natural talent is often the byproduct of early exposure, ample practice time, and a supportive environment that nurtures growth. The 10,000-hour rule thus challenges our conventional wisdom about talent. It forces us to acknowledge that while raw ability is important, it's the sheer volume of practice that often makes the difference. This notion extends into fields like chess and competitive gaming, where long hours spent studying strategies, playing countless matches, and analyzing every move become the crucible in which mastery is forged. Similarly, in the realm of business and entrepreneurship, while visionary ideas are essential, it is often the tireless grind, the endless meetings, failures, and adjustments that refine a concept into a market-changing innovation. Gladwell's argument here is both a tribute to hard work and a challenge to the myth of the overnight success. In an era where social media tends to glorify instant fame and quick wins, the 10,000-hour rule is a sobering reminder that genuine expertise and breakthrough achievements are built over years of perseverance. It's the long haul that counts, not a single lightning bolt of inspiration. The role of opportunity and timing. While the 10,000-hour rule emphasizes the value of sustained practice, Gladwell is careful to note that practice alone isn't sufficient. Opportunity and timing play equally critical roles in the journey to mastery. For Bill Joy and many others, the chance to put in those 10,000 hours didn't come by accident. It was the product of a fortuitous set of circumstances. In Bill Joy's case, his access to the University of Michigan's cutting-edge computer center in the early 1970s was a game-changer. Had he not been in the right place at the right time, the opportunity to immerse himself in a world of state-of-the-art technology might never have presented itself. Similarly, in the world of music, the environment in which a young violinist grows up can either foster or hinder the opportunity to engage in deliberate practice. Factors such as socioeconomic background, availability of quality instruction, and cultural attitudes toward practice all converge to either open doors or block them. The interplay between hard work and opportunity underscores one of Gladwell's central themes throughout Outliers. Success is rarely the result of isolated individual effort. It's a product of a network of advantages, cultural, environmental, and temporal, that converge to create the perfect storm for achievement. The 10,000 hours of practice that an individual puts in is undeniably important, but that practice must occur within an ecosystem that supports and recognizes talent. This perspective shifts the focus from a simplistic, rags-to-riches narrative to a more nuanced understanding of success. It prompts us to ask, how many potential Bill Joys are out there who never get the opportunity to accumulate their 10,000 hours? And what can society do to create conditions where more people are given the chance to hone their craft? Gladwell's insights here are not just academic. They carry significant implications for education, talent development, and even public policy. By rethinking how opportunities are distributed, we might unlock hidden reservoirs of talent that have been waiting in the wings all along. Vi. Deliberate practice versus routine repetition. The quality factor. One of the most crucial distinctions Gladwell makes in this chapter is between mere repetition and what he terms deliberate practice. It isn't enough to simply clock in hours. The quality of those hours is paramount. Deliberate practice is a focused, goal-oriented process that pushes an individual beyond their current limits. It involves setting specific objectives, receiving immediate feedback, and continuously striving to correct mistakes. For instance, a young pianist might spend hours playing scales and simple pieces, but without challenging material or critical feedback, those hours won't necessarily translate into improvement. In contrast, a pianist who is rigorously coached, who practices challenging compositions, and who constantly reviews and refines their technique is engaging in deliberate practice, the kind that can lead to mastery. Gladwell points to research showing that the best performers in any field are not simply those who work the longest, but those who work the smartest. This involves breaking down complex tasks into manageable components, focusing on weaknesses, and steadily expanding one's comfort zone. The same principle applies to computer programming, where debugging a complex algorithm or learning a new programming language requires far more than rote repetition. It demands intense concentration, problem-solving, and iterative learning. The message is clear. When it comes to achieving greatness, not all practice is created equal. It's the quality and intentionality of the practice that ultimately determine how much an individual improves over time. In a way, the 10,000 hours are not a magic number in isolation. They're a benchmark that signals the culmination of a process that, when done right, leads to unparalleled expertise. Point 7. Cultural factors and the 10,000-hour phenomenon. While the 10,000-hour rule might sound like a universal principle, Gladwell also emphasizes that cultural factors play a significant role in determining who gets to put in those hours. In some cultures, early exposure to rigorous practice is the norm, while in others, there is less emphasis on repetitive, disciplined work. This cultural difference can create an uneven playing field where individuals from certain backgrounds have a head start simply because their environment values and supports the kind of hard work that leads to mastery. For example, in some East Asian cultures, children are encouraged to practice relentlessly in areas like music, mathematics, or even calligraphy from an early age. This early immersion can lead to an exponential growth in skills that would be unimaginable in cultures where such practice isn't as culturally ingrained. In the United States, while the narrative of individualism is strong, Gladwell's analysis suggests that systemic factors, such as access to quality education, extracurricular opportunities, and supportive mentorship, are just as critical in determining who reaches that coveted 10,000-hour mark. This cultural lens forces us to consider the broader context in which the 10,000-hour rule operates. It isn't merely a personal challenge, it's also a societal one. How can we structure our schools, our workplaces, and our communities so that more individuals are given the opportunity and the support to put in the work necessary to achieve greatness? Gladwell doesn't offer all the answers, but he does prompt us to rethink our assumptions about talent and success. The implication is that by addressing these cultural and systemic factors, we might be able to create a more inclusive environment where a wider range of people can benefit from the transformative power of deliberate practice. Point 8. The limits of the rule and the role of innate talent. Now, while the 10,000-hour rule is a powerful concept, Gladwell is careful not to dismiss the role of innate talent altogether. He acknowledges that natural ability does matter, but only up to a point. The difference between a good musician and a world-class performer isn't as dramatic as we might think if we look solely at the numbers. What truly sets the best apart is not an inexplicable spark of genius, but the willingness to work harder and smarter than anyone else. This nuanced view helps debunk the myth of the prodigy who effortlessly rises to the top. Even in cases like Mozart, often held up as an example of natural genius, the narrative is more complicated. Mozart's early compositions, while impressive, were largely shaped by the rigorous training and guidance he received from his father and mentors. It was only after years of practice and refinement that his work reached the levels of genius we celebrate today. The lesson here is that innate talent provides the initial spark, but it is the accumulation of practice that fuels the fire of excellence. Gladwell's argument, therefore, isn't that natural ability is irrelevant. It's that it's not the sole or even the most important determinant of success. Instead, the interplay between talent, opportunity, and an extraordinary commitment to deliberate practice is what creates the perfect storm for extraordinary achievement. It's a reminder that the stories of overnight success are, more often than not, the result of years of unseen, unglamorous hard work. Point 9. Real-world applications and implications. The implications of the 10,000-hour rule extend far beyond the realms of music and computing. In the business world, for example, entrepreneurs and executives often attribute their success to a mix of innovative ideas and hard work. But what if much of that success is actually the product of long, painstaking hours spent learning, failing, and iterating? Gladwell's analysis suggests that many of the traits we admire in successful business leaders, their ability to navigate complex problems, make informed decisions, and inspire teams, are honed over years of deliberate practice. This perspective has practical implications for how we structure our educational systems, our workplaces, and even our personal lives. If we accept that mastery is achieved through thousands of hours of deliberate effort, then perhaps we should rethink how we allocate time for skill development, both in schools and on the job. Rather than celebrating quick wins or overnight sensations, we might instead focus on creating environments that reward perseverance and long-term commitment. For instance, companies could invest more in employee training programs that encourage continuous improvement rather than simply hiring rock star talent. Schools could emphasize mastery-based learning, where the focus is on sustained effort and gradual improvement rather than short-term performance. The rule also challenges the often oversimplified narrative of the American dream. It's tempting to believe that anyone can achieve greatness if they just work hard enough. And while hard work is undoubtedly a critical ingredient, the 10,000-hour rule reminds us that opportunity and a supportive ecosystem are equally important. It's not enough to simply have ambition. You need an environment that nurtures that ambition and gives you the space to practice, fail, learn, and ultimately excel. X. A new lens on failure and success. One of the more transformative insights of this chapter is the way the 10,000-hour rule reshapes our understanding of failure. In a culture that often leonizes natural talent, failure is seen as a personal shortcoming, a sign that someone simply isn't cut out for greatness. But when you consider the rule in action, it becomes clear that failure is more often a consequence of circumstances, a lack of opportunity to accumulate enough practice hours, a deficiency in the quality of practice, or simply the absence of the right supportive environment. By reframing failure as a systemic issue rather than an individual one, Gladwell invites us to take a more compassionate and holistic view of success. It's not enough to celebrate the brilliant outcomes. We must also acknowledge the countless hours of unseen labor and the structured support systems that make those outcomes possible. This understanding can have far-reaching implications, not only for how we assess individual performance, but also for how we design systems that allow more people to succeed. 11. The takeaway: hard work, opportunity, and the American spirit. In wrapping up the 10,000-hour rule, Gladwell leaves us with a powerful message that resonates deeply with the American ethos. The story of Bill Joy, the insights from Erickson's research, and the myriad examples drawn from sports, music, and business collectively illustrate a singular truth. Extraordinary success is rarely a stroke of luck or an inborn gift. It's the culmination of relentless, deliberate practice, the fortunate alignment of opportunity, timing, and cultural support, and an unwavering commitment to improvement. This perspective challenges the conventional wisdom of the self-made man by revealing the hidden infrastructure behind success. It's not just about being smart or having talent. It's about putting in the time, seizing the opportunities, and thriving in an environment that cultivates growth. For Americans who pride themselves on the virtues of hard work and determination, the 10,000-hour rule is both a vindication of those values and a call to broaden our understanding of what it means to be successful. In the end, the rule isn't meant to diminish the role of effort. It's meant to shine a light on the fact that what we often celebrate as natural talent is really the result of years of practice. It's a reminder that behind every towering achievement lies a foundation built, not in a day, but over thousands of hours of hard, unglamorous work. Point 12. Conclusion. The journey is the destination. As we close out Chapter 2, the lesson is clear. Greatness is within reach if you're willing to commit to the long haul. The 10,000-hour rule is more than a simple metric. It's a philosophy that encapsulates the journey toward mastery. It reminds us that every expert was once a beginner, and every success story is paved with countless hours of sweat, frustration, and incremental victories. In the American narrative, where the promise of opportunity is a constant refrain, the 10,000-hour rule reinforces the idea that our destiny is not solely determined by luck or innate ability. Instead, it's shaped by the choices we make every single day, the hours we invest, the challenges we overcome, and the relentless pursuit of improvement. It's a testament to the power of perseverance, to the idea that the American dream isn't just handed to you on a silver platter. It's earned, one deliberate hour at a time. Final thoughts. Chapter 2 of Outliers, the 10,000-hour rule, offers a sweeping, thought-provoking analysis of what it takes to achieve greatness. It forces us to re-examine our assumptions about talent and success, reminding us that while natural ability plays a role, it's the cumulative effect of thousands of hours of practice that ultimately distinguishes the exceptional from the merely competent. From the story of Bill Joy to groundbreaking research on deliberate practice, Gladwell's narrative is a call to embrace the grind, to value the journey over the destination, and to recognize that behind every great achievement lies an unseen legacy of hard work. This chapter isn't just about computers or music. It's about the universal truth that the path to mastery is long, arduous, and profoundly rewarding. It challenges us to look beyond the glamorous highlight reels and appreciate the everyday effort that transforms potential into excellence. In doing so, it not only redefines what it means to be successful, but also inspires us to take our own first steps toward greatness. Imagine being gifted with a mind so razor-sharp it seems destined to conquer every challenge, but then discovering that this very brilliance can also isolate you, leaving you ill-equipped for the everyday realities of life. Picture a kid whose IQ soars well above the norm, yet whose towering intellect makes it hard to connect, collaborate, or navigate the messy, unpredictable world beyond the classroom. In The Trouble with Geniuses, Part 1, Malcolm Gladwell invites us to explore a paradox that's as unsettling as it is fascinating. Sometimes, being too smart can actually be a disadvantage. This chapter challenges the traditional view of genius, urging us to look beyond raw brainpower and consider how social skills, practical wisdom, and the right opportunities often matter far more than a high test score. The myth of the self-made genius in our culture, the image of the lone genius, an individual who rises to greatness solely on the strength of innate brilliance, is an enduring myth. The narrative of this self-made prodigy is woven into the fabric of American lore. Think of the stories we tell about innovators and inventors who seem to have appeared fully formed, destined for greatness. However, Gladwell dismantles this romantic notion by showing that genius, when measured by high IQ alone, isn't enough to guarantee success in the real world. He points out that society has long been dazzled by extraordinary intelligence, often overlooking the crucial roles that luck, timing, and social context play in shaping a life. In this chapter, Gladwell sets the stage by questioning whether raw intellectual horsepower can navigate the complexities of human relationships, decision-making under pressure, and the practical challenges of day-to-day life. Instead of celebrating genius as an isolated gift, he argues that our cultural fixation on IQ oversimplifies what it means to truly excel. The self-made myth, it turns out, is not only incomplete, it can be downright misleading. Point 2. Defining intelligence. Beyond the IQ score, at the heart of The Trouble with Geniuses is the question, what is intelligence, really? Traditionally, intelligence has been measured by IQ tests, a metric that quantifies one's ability to solve abstract problems, recognize patterns, and process information quickly. While IQ tests have their uses, Gladwell argues that they capture only one facet of human capability. He explains that there's a critical difference between analytical intelligence, the kind that scores well on standardized tests, and practical intelligence, or what some might call street smarts. Practical intelligence involves the ability to adapt to real-world situations, to understand social cues, and to navigate complex human interactions. It's about knowing how to apply abstract knowledge in everyday settings. For instance, a person might be exceptionally good at solving puzzles, but struggle with basic interpersonal communication or decision-making under pressure. Gladwell emphasizes that the very qualities that get measured by an IQ test do not necessarily predict success outside the narrow confines of an exam room. In many cases, a high IQ can be a double-edged sword. While it may open certain doors, it does little to guarantee the social competence and emotional resilience needed to thrive in a collaborative, unpredictable world. The chapter pushes us to reconsider the weight we place on standardized measures of intelligence, urging a broader, more nuanced understanding of what it takes to succeed. 3. The High IQ Conundrum. Christopher Langan as a case study to illustrate the complexities of genius. Gladwell introduces us to one of America's most enigmatic figures, Christopher Langan. Often hailed as the smartest man in America, with an IQ that reportedly towers above 190, Langan's life is a study in contradiction. Despite his staggering intellectual potential, Langan's story is marked by struggles in navigating everyday life. A poignant reminder that extraordinary IQ does not automatically translate to extraordinary success, that Langan's early life was filled with challenges. Raised in an environment that did not nurture his unique gifts, he encountered obstacles that no standardized test could predict. His difficulties in finding common ground with others, in understanding the unspoken rules of social interaction, and in accessing the same opportunities that others take for granted underscore the limits of pure intellectual power. Gladwell uses Langan's example to underscore an important point. High IQ alone cannot overcome the absence of a supportive social framework. In Langan's case, the gap between what IQ tests measure and what real-life success requires becomes starkly apparent. His life, marked by both brilliant insights and significant personal struggles, compels us to ask, what do geniuses really need to flourish? The answer, as Gladwell suggests, lies not solely in individual intelligence, but in the interplay between that intelligence and the environment in which it is nurtured. 4. The social skills gap. When brainpower isn't enough, a recurring theme in this chapter is the idea that social skills are often more important than raw intellectual might. While an IQ test might capture the capacity for abstract reasoning, it doesn't measure empathy, emotional intelligence, or the ability to collaborate with others. These qualities are essential for navigating the complexities of modern society. Gladwell highlights that many individuals with astronomical IQ scores lack the practical social skills required to transform potential into tangible success. For example, the ability to communicate effectively, to build relationships, and to work as part of a team is indispensable in almost every arena, from business to academia to creative endeavors. Without these skills, even the most brilliant ideas can fail to materialize into meaningful achievements. In an American context, where the ideal of the self-reliant genius is so deeply ingrained, this realization is particularly jarring. Society tends to celebrate the lone genius, but in reality, success almost always depends on one's ability to connect, communicate, and collaborate. Gladwell argues that the very traits that make someone appear genius on paper may not be sufficient or even advantageous in the social and professional landscapes of our time. This gap between cognitive brilliance and social adeptness is at the core of the troubles that many geniuses face. The education system and the isolation of the gifted. Another critical point Gladwell makes is about how the education system interacts with genius. While schools are designed to identify and nurture talent, they often fail those who do not fit neatly into the conventional mold. Gifted students, particularly those with exceptionally high IQs, frequently find themselves alienated by an educational system that caters to the average student. In many instances, schools emphasize conformity and standardized achievement over creativity and independent thought. As a result, geniuses like Langan may end up feeling isolated, misunderstood, and unsupported. Rather than being challenged and encouraged, they might be relegated to a corner of the classroom where their unique talents are overlooked or even actively suppressed. This mismatch between a genius's needs and the educational environment can have lasting consequences, stunting the very potential that high IQ scores suggest should lead to extraordinary outcomes. Gladwell contends that to truly cultivate genius, society must rethink how we structure educational systems. Rather than one-size-fits-all approaches, there should be flexible environments that recognize and nurture diverse forms of intelligence, including those that don't always translate into high social or academic conformity. The chapter challenges policymakers and educators alike to consider how best to harness the potential of those who think differently, recognizing that the traditional metrics of success may not apply equally to every kind of brilliance to VI. The threshold effect. When more IQ doesn't mean more success, one of the most counterintuitive ideas explored in this chapter is the threshold effect. Gladwell points out that once an individual's IQ surpasses a certain level, additional points do not correspond to further increases in real-world success. In other words, while there is a minimum level of intelligence required to navigate the world effectively, having an IQ that far exceeds this threshold does not guarantee a proportionate boost in achievement. This insight challenges the prevailing notion that the smartest people are always the most successful. Instead, it suggests that after reaching a certain point, other factors, such as practical intelligence, creativity, and the ability to leverage social networks, become far more important in determining one's accomplishments. Gladwell argues that it is precisely this plateau that explains why many so-called geniuses struggle to achieve the kinds of success that society expects from them. The threshold effect forces us to reconsider the value we place on high IQ scores. It's a humbling reminder that while cognitive ability is important, it is not the sole determinant of one's destiny. Real-world success is a multifaceted construct that depends on a delicate balance of intellectual, emotional, and social factors. In the American narrative of meritocracy, this is a particularly disruptive idea, suggesting that beyond a certain point, more intelligence does not equate to more success. Point 7. Personal stories. The double-edged sword of genius. Gladwell enriches his argument with personal anecdotes and stories that illustrate the complex lives of high IQ individuals. One recurring example is that of young prodigies who, despite their extraordinary mental gifts, often face significant hurdles in their personal and professional lives. Their stories are not simply tales of triumph over adversity. They are cautionary accounts of how brilliance, when unsupported by emotional and social competencies, can lead to isolation, frustration, and even failure. These narratives serve as powerful counterpoints to the conventional hero's journey. Rather than depicting genius as an unalloyed blessing, Gladwell shows that exceptional intelligence can sometimes be as much a curse as it is a gift. The very traits that allow these individuals to excel academically or intellectually can simultaneously hinder their ability to integrate into everyday social environments. They may be misunderstood by their peers, unable to relate to others, and left feeling alienated in a society that prizes conformity as much as it does individual achievement. The stories Gladwell shares are imbued with a raw honesty that challenges the myth of the effortlessly successful genius. They compel us to ask difficult questions about the costs of high intelligence. What price do geniuses pay for their extraordinary minds? And how might society better support those whose intellectual gifts set them apart in ways that are not always beneficial? 8. The cultural bias toward the average. A recurring theme in this chapter is the idea that society, particularly in the United States, tends to elevate traits that are common rather than those that are exceptional. The cultural bias toward the average means that traits such as sociability, conformism, and practical know-how are often rewarded more consistently than raw, untempered intelligence. This bias is evident in many aspects of American life, from hiring practices and educational admissions to everyday social interactions. Gladwell argues that the very systems designed to reward merit often end up sidelining those who deviate from the norm. High IQ individuals, with their unconventional ways of thinking and their often nonconformist attitudes, can find themselves at odds with a culture that values group cohesion and practical competence. The implicit message is that to be successful in America, one must not only be smart, but also be relatable, communicative, and adaptable. Qualities that may not come naturally to those who are extraordinarily gifted in more abstract domains. This cultural dynamic helps explain why many geniuses, despite their intellectual prowess, may struggle to achieve the kind of success celebrated in popular media. It's a sobering insight that challenges the idealized image of the lone genius, suggesting instead that social acceptance and the ability to fit in are critical components of success. Gladwell's critique of cultural biases calls for a broader, more inclusive understanding of merit, one that recognizes the diverse skills and qualities necessary for real-world achievement. Point 9. Reassessing success. Beyond the numbers, one of the most profound implications of The Trouble with Geniuses, Part 1, is the need to reassess how we define and measure success. If high IQ does not necessarily lead to success, then what does? Gladwell's analysis points us toward a more holistic view of achievement, one that values a combination of cognitive ability, social skills, emotional intelligence, and opportunity. This broader perspective forces us to question the emphasis placed on standardized testing and academic accolades. While these measures may provide some insight into a person's intellectual potential, they fail to capture the full spectrum of what it means to be successful. In today's fast-paced, interconnected world, qualities like adaptability, collaboration, and resilience are often just as important, if not more so, than raw cognitive ability. For instance, many successful business leaders and innovators are not the ones with the highest IQ scores. They are the ones who can navigate complex social landscapes, build effective teams, and pivot in response to changing circumstances. This redefinition of success is both liberating and challenging. It frees us from the narrow confines of numerical intelligence, while simultaneously demanding that we develop and nurture skills that are far harder to quantify. Gladwell's call is clear. We must broaden our understanding of what it means to succeed. In doing so, we might create environments where a wider array of talents is recognized and cultivated. Environments in which the true potential of every individual, regardless of whether their IQ soars above 190 or hovers just above average, can be fully realized. X. Implications for policy and practice. The insights from this chapter are not merely academic musings. They have practical implications for education, business, and public policy. If the challenges faced by geniuses are rooted in a system that values conformity and average social skills over raw intellectual ability, then there is a clear need for reform. Educational institutions, for example, could benefit from rethinking how they support gifted students. Instead of treating high IQ individuals as problems to be managed or anomalies to be isolated, schools could create programs specifically designed to nurture both their intellectual and social development. Similarly, in the workplace, companies might consider how they assess talent. Rather than relying solely on credentials and test scores, employers could put greater emphasis on a candidate's practical abilities, teamwork, and emotional intelligence. By doing so, they would not only tap into the full spectrum of human talent, but also help to bridge the gap between raw intellectual potential and real-world success. Public policy, too, can draw lessons from Gladwell's analysis. Recognizing that success is not determined by IQ alone could lead to initiatives that promote more holistic forms of education and workforce development, ones that reward creativity, adaptability, and interpersonal skills as much as they do academic achievement. Such reforms might help to level the playing field, ensuring that those with extraordinary intellectual gifts are given the support they need to flourish rather than be left behind by a system that values the average. Point 11. Conclusion. Embracing a new paradigm of genius. The Trouble with Geniuses, Part 1, ultimately challenges us to rethink our assumptions about intelligence and success. It tells us that being exceptionally smart is not a guaranteed ticket to a stellar life. That brilliance, when not complemented by practical skills and a supportive environment, can sometimes be more of a burden than a blessing. Gladwell's exploration of the high IQ conundrum, exemplified by figures like Christopher Langan, forces us to acknowledge that our society's methods for measuring and rewarding success are deeply flawed. The chapter leaves us with a provocative, if uncomfortable, truth that in a world that values conformity and practical competence, raw intellectual brilliance is not enough. To truly succeed, one must navigate the intricate interplay between cognitive ability, social acumen, and opportunity, a balance that many geniuses, for all their mental gifts, struggle to achieve. As we close this chapter, we are left with a challenge to broaden our definition of genius and to create systems that recognize and nurture the full range of human potential. Only by doing so can we hope to build a society where every mind, no matter how extraordinary, is given the chance to thrive. Final thoughts in The Trouble with Geniuses, Part 1. Malcolm Gladwell pulls back the curtain on the high IQ myth, revealing that extraordinary cognitive ability, when divorced from practical social skills and nurtured within a supportive framework, may not lead to the kind of success we so often idealize. Instead, he paints a picture of a world where the very gifts that set individuals apart can also become obstacles if not properly channeled. This chapter stands as a powerful reminder that true success is a mosaic, a blend of raw intelligence, emotional intelligence, social savvy, and opportunity. It calls on us to reject simplistic narratives and embrace a richer, more complex understanding of what it means to be truly successful. Picture a young prodigy whose mind races faster than everyone else's, a mind so brilliant that ideas flow like electricity. Now imagine that same brilliance, instead of opening every door, ends up isolating him from the everyday world. In The Trouble with Geniuses, Part 2, Malcolm Gladwell takes us further into the paradox that being exceptionally smart isn't always the golden ticket to success. Instead, he reveals that a mind operating at such an extraordinary level can sometimes be out of sync with the real world, where social intuition, practical judgment, and the ability to navigate life's messy uncertainties are often more valuable than raw IQ. This chapter deepens our understanding of how a towering intellect, when not accompanied by the skills needed to connect with others or adapt to everyday challenges, can ironically become a handicap. Reassessing the limits of cognitive brilliance in the first part of The Trouble with Geniuses, Gladwell laid the groundwork by illustrating how high IQ, despite its glamour, can fail to predict real-world success. In Part 2, he delves deeper into why this gap widens as the intelligence quotient climbs. Gladwell argues that there's a point where additional cognitive horsepower yields diminishing returns. When a person's IQ soars far above the average, the extra points on a test may look impressive on paper, but they often do little to enhance one's ability to handle the practical, day-to-day tasks that build a life and a career. He explains that the conventional measures of intelligence, such as standardized IQ tests, capture only a narrow slice of what it means to be smart. For instance, while such tests assess memory, logical reasoning, and pattern recognition, they do not measure the ability to read social cues, make decisions in ambiguous situations, or maintain effective relationships under stress. This gap between academic or analytical smarts and what Gladwell terms practical intelligence becomes a critical fault line for those whose cognitive abilities exceed the norm by a wide margin. In the words of many American observers, being a genius without common sense can sometimes feel like having all the horsepower in a car, but no steering wheel. Point 2. The social disconnect. When high IQ doesn't translate to life skills, one of the central themes of this chapter is the social disconnect that can plague individuals with exceptionally high IQs. Gladwell underscores that while academic brilliance is celebrated, it does not necessarily equip one with the skills to navigate interpersonal relationships or the unpredictable nature of everyday challenges. High IQ individuals often struggle with street smarts, the capacity to understand and manage real-life situations that require nuanced social awareness and empathy. Gladwell presents vivid examples of geniuses whose lives, despite being marked by astounding intellectual feats, have been marred by isolation and miscommunication. In many cases, these individuals have difficulty deciphering the unwritten rules of social interaction. Their conversations, brimming with abstract concepts and technical jargon, can leave them alienated in settings where emotional nuance and a more grounded approach are needed. This disconnect is especially problematic in an American society that, despite its celebration of the lone genius, ultimately values teamwork, leadership, and the ability to influence others. The chapter makes it clear, success in the real world hinges not only on mental acuity, but also on the capacity to work with and inspire others. In environments ranging from corporate boardrooms to community organizations, the skills that build bridges, such as communication, empathy, and compromise are as critical as analytical prowess. For geniuses who lack these social competencies, the isolation can be both professionally limiting and personally lonely. 3. The role of practical intelligence and wisdom. Gladwell introduces the idea that beyond raw cognitive ability lies another dimension of intelligence, practical intelligence, which he sometimes equates with wisdom. This isn't the academic kind that you can measure with numbers. It's the know-how that helps individuals apply their knowledge effectively in everyday life. Practical intelligence includes the ability to assess a situation quickly, read subtle cues in a conversation, and decide on the best course of action under pressure. It's about understanding what to do in moments when there are no clear-cut answers. For many highly intelligent individuals, especially those who spent their formative years immersed in academic pursuits, the opportunity to develop practical intelligence may be limited. They often learn to excel in structured environments, solving puzzles, mastering theoretical problems, and achieving high test scores. Yet, when they step outside that comfort zone, they may find that the strategies that worked in a classroom or laboratory don't translate to the real world, where circumstances are fluid and relationships complex. This distinction is pivotal in Gladwell's argument. He contends that many geniuses fall short not because they lack potential, but because they haven't had the social experiences that foster practical judgment. In a nation that prizes the self-made individual, there's an inherent irony. While America venerates intellectual achievement, its most successful leaders are those who combine book smarts with common sense. This melding of abilities is what creates the versatile, adaptable leader, someone who can innovate in the boardroom and connect with people on a personal level. 4. The hidden curriculum. What schools don't teach the gifted. A significant portion of Chapter 4 is devoted to examining the shortcomings of our educational systems when it comes to nurturing the full spectrum of intelligence. While schools are adept at cultivating academic skills and rewarding high test scores, they often overlook the hidden curriculum, the informal lessons about social interaction, emotional regulation, and practical decision-making that are crucial for success in everyday life. Gladwell argues that for many gifted individuals, school becomes a double-edged sword. On one hand, their intellectual abilities are recognized and even celebrated. On the other, they are not provided with the tools to translate that brilliance into real-world success. The educational focus on standardized testing and quantifiable achievements means that many gifted students are trained to operate within a narrow set of parameters, leaving them ill-equipped for challenges that demand flexibility, creativity, or emotional intelligence. That he critiques the one-size-fits-all approach of most schools, which often marginalizes those who don't fit neatly into its structure. Gifted students, who think differently and may not adhere to social norms, can end up isolated or misunderstood. Their unique perspectives, while valuable in theory, are frequently sidelined in an environment that prioritizes conformity over originality. In a culture that celebrates the average for its reliability and ease of management, the outliers, those who dare to think differently, can be left adrift. Gladwell's discussion here is a call to reimagine education, not merely as a pipeline for academic achievement, but as a holistic system that values and nurtures all forms of intelligence. He suggests that if schools were to incorporate lessons in practical intelligence, empathy, and social navigation alongside traditional subjects, the outcomes for gifted individuals could be transformed. In essence, nurturing genius requires more than just challenging the mind. It also requires equipping the heart and social skills to deal with a world that is often unpredictable and messy. The cost of overvaluing IQ. Personal and societal consequences. In this chapter, Gladwell does not shy away from exploring the often overlooked cost of overvaluing raw IQ. When society places an almost worshipful emphasis on cognitive scores, it inadvertently sets up an environment where individuals who don't excel in standardized measures are left behind, even if they possess other crucial qualities. The fixation on IQ can lead to an imbalance where academic achievement is seen as the be-all and end-all of success, while practical skills and emotional intelligence are undervalued. This overemphasis can have severe personal consequences. For geniuses who struggle with the practical aspects of life, the inability to connect socially or to navigate everyday challenges can lead to feelings of isolation, frustration, and even depression. Their potential, instead of being a launch pad to greatness, can become a source of constant internal conflict and external misunderstanding. Gladwell illustrates how this phenomenon not only affects individual lives but also has broader societal repercussions. When our institutions, be they educational, corporate, or governmental, reward only one type of intelligence, they risk squandering a wealth of untapped potential. In a nation that prides itself on meritocracy, this is a sobering reminder that our measures of success may be as flawed as they are narrow. On a societal level, the costs are equally profound. By overvaluing IQ and neglecting practical intelligence, we may be missing out on leaders who can bridge the gap between theory and practice, between innovation and execution. The very systems that drive progress, from business to technology to public policy, require a balance of skills that include both analytical acumen and the ability to inspire and connect with people. Without this balance, we risk creating environments where brilliant ideas remain unfulfilled or where innovative solutions fail to materialize because they cannot be effectively communicated or implemented. Vi. Rethinking Genius, a call for a more inclusive definition. One of the most provocative contributions of The Trouble with Geniuses, Part 2, is its challenge to our conventional definition of genius. Gladwell contends that our cultural obsession with IQ is not only incomplete, it's potentially harmful. In Redefining Genius, he argues for a broader, more inclusive understanding that recognizes multiple dimensions of human capability. This redefinition includes acknowledging the value of what some may call practical wisdom. It's the kind of intelligence that allows someone to navigate a difficult conversation, resolve a conflict at work, or lead a team through a crisis. It's not the kind of brilliance that can be neatly quantified by a number on a test, but it is the kind that truly makes a difference in everyday life. By expanding our definition of genius to include these dimensions, we not only better appreciate the full spectrum of human talent, but also set the stage for a society that can nurture and celebrate a wider range of abilities. Gladwell's argument here is a rallying cry for change, a call for institutions to shift their focus from narrow metrics of success to more holistic measures that value creativity, adaptability, and social competence. For Americans who cherish the ideals of the self-made individual, this redefinition offers a powerful reminder. True genius is not just about raw brainpower. It's about the ability to apply that power in ways that improve lives, inspire communities, and solve real-world problems. Point 7. Lessons from lives less ordinary. Case studies and anecdotes. Throughout this chapter, Gladwell peppers his analysis with vivid case studies and personal anecdotes that highlight the complex realities faced by those labeled as geniuses. He recounts the stories of individuals who, despite possessing astronomical IQs, found themselves at odds with the practical demands of the world around them. These narratives serve as both cautionary tales and sources of insight, illustrating that brilliance without balance can be as much a burden as it is a gift. For example, Gladwell revisits the life of Christopher Langan, a figure whose intellectual prowess has earned him headlines and accolades. In Part 2, however, he digs deeper into the nuances of Langan's struggles. Despite his remarkable mental capabilities, Langan's difficulties in forging meaningful relationships and navigating the complexities of everyday interactions underscore a recurring theme. That being exceptionally smart in one domain does not automatically confer success in all areas of life. His story, along with those of other high IQ individuals, challenges us to rethink the narrow focus on IQ and to appreciate the full tapestry of skills required to thrive. These stories are presented with a frankness that is both empathetic and illuminating. They remind us that the path to success is rarely smooth, even for those who seem to have every advantage. In a culture that so often romanticizes genius as an unmitigated blessing, these accounts force us to confront a more nuanced reality. That the very traits that set individuals apart can also isolate them if they are not tempered by social intelligence and practical wisdom. Point 8. Bridging the gap. Strategies for nurturing well-rounded genius. Given the challenges that high IQ individuals face, Gladwell does not leave us with a pessimistic view of genius. Instead, he offers a framework for how society, and institutions in particular, might bridge the gap between intellectual potential and practical achievement. One key strategy is to integrate training that focuses on developing interpersonal skills alongside academic learning. For schools, this might mean creating mentorship programs, collaborative projects, and extracurricular activities that emphasize real-world problem-solving and emotional intelligence. In the corporate world, the lesson is similar. Companies that wish to harness the full potential of brilliant minds must invest in developing well-rounded leaders, those who not only analyze data with precision but also communicate effectively, build teams, and inspire others. Such environments recognize that while intellectual horsepower is important, the ability to translate that intellect into practical, actionable outcomes is what ultimately drives success. Gladwell's insights here serve as a blueprint for rethinking how we define and cultivate talent. Rather than measuring success solely by test scores or technical achievements, we might begin to place greater emphasis on the capacity to innovate collaboratively and to adapt to the fluid demands of modern society. This, he argues, is the kind of genius that can truly change the world, a genius that blends high IQ with high EQ, analytical prowess with practical wisdom. Point 9. The American perspective, striving for a balanced ideal for many in the United States, the archetype of the genius has long been synonymous with the solitary, brilliant individual who defies conventional norms and changes the world through sheer intellectual force. Yet, as Gladwell demonstrates in this chapter, the American ideal of the self-made genius is incomplete. In a nation built on the promise of equal opportunity and the power of collaboration, the most effective leaders are often those who can balance individual brilliance with the ability to work harmoniously with others. This realization resonates deeply with American values. The country's history is replete with stories of innovators who not only possessed extraordinary mental capabilities but also had the vision and social skills to rally people around their ideas. The American dream, in its truest form, is not about solitary achievement. It's about harnessing individual talent to build something greater than oneself. Gladwell's re-examination of genius invites us to question whether our current systems truly nurture this balanced ideal, or whether we continue to cling to outdated metrics that favor raw cognitive ability over the more elusive qualities of emotional intelligence and practical judgment. In this light, the chapter becomes a call for a cultural shift. It challenges educators, business leaders, and policymakers to create environments where exceptional minds are not only recognized for their intellectual gifts but are also supported in developing the skills that allow them to thrive in a complex, interconnected world. The message is clear. A society that wishes to harness the full potential of its brilliant citizens must learn to value and cultivate the broader spectrum of human intelligence. Conclusion: Rethinking Genius for a New Era. As the trouble with geniuses, Part 2 draws to a close, Gladwell leaves us with a provocative challenge: to rethink our narrow definitions of intelligence and to embrace a more holistic view of what it means to be truly successful. The chapter drives home the idea that while high IQ may open certain doors, it is the combination of analytical ability with practical, social, and emotional skills that ultimately determines one's ability to navigate the real world. For those of us who hold the American dream in high regard, this redefinition is both liberating and humbling. It reminds us that no matter how brilliant one might be, success is rarely achieved in isolation. Instead, it is forged through a delicate balance of individual effort, collaborative spirit, and the serendipitous opportunities that arise when talent meets the right environment. In re-examining the lives of geniuses who have struggled with the demands of everyday life, Gladwell challenges us to build a society that recognizes the full spectrum of human potential. This means moving beyond the simplistic equations of IQ and hard work to develop a richer, more nuanced understanding of what it takes to succeed. It's a call to create educational systems, workplaces, and communities that nurture not just the mind, but the whole person, a vision that, if realized, could transform not only individual lives but the very fabric of American society. Final Thoughts. Chapter 4 of Outliers, The Trouble with Geniuses, Part 2, offers a sobering yet inspiring look at the limitations of traditional measures of intelligence. It exposes the vulnerabilities inherent in a system that prizes raw cognitive ability above all else and challenges us to reconsider how we support those who stand at the far reaches of intellectual capacity. Through rich anecdotes, incisive analysis, and a narrative that never shies away from the complexities of human talent, Gladwell invites us to see genius not as a monolithic gift, but as a multifaceted phenomenon, one that requires balance, support, and a broader understanding of what it means to truly excel. As we reflect on this chapter, the message is unmistakable. Being exceptionally smart is not enough if that brilliance remains isolated from the practical realities of life. True genius is measured not just by the number of IQ points one accumulates, but by the ability to translate that potential into real-world success. a success that depends as much on heart and social savvy as it does on brainpower, that in challenging our preconceptions about genius. Gladwell provides a blueprint for a future where every brilliant mind is given not only the chance to shine in theory, but also the opportunity to thrive in practice. It's a vision of a more inclusive, supportive, and ultimately more effective way of nurturing human talent. A vision that resonates deeply with the American spirit of innovation, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. Imagine a young immigrant kid growing up in New York City, facing closed doors at every turn, yet possessing a relentless drive and an uncanny ability to spot opportunity where others saw only obstacles. Picture someone who, against overwhelming odds, builds an entire legal empire out of the scraps left behind by the establishment. This isn't a fairy tale spun from wishful thinking. It's the real-life story of Joe Flom, a man whose career defied conventional wisdom and whose success came not merely from raw intellect, but from a potent mix of timing, cultural legacy, and a fierce work ethic. In The 3 Lessons of Joe Flom, Malcolm Gladwell unpacks how demographic luck, cultural forces, and hard, focused work combined to shape Flom's extraordinary rise. Get ready to dive into a chapter that challenges our most cherished myths about the American dream and redefines what it means to truly succeed. Introduction. The extraordinary journey of Joe Flom. Joe Flom's story is one that embodies the gritty, determined spirit of America's underdogs. Born into a world that was not designed for him, a world where Jewish immigrants were routinely sidelined by the traditional law firms of New York, Flom had to navigate a labyrinth of prejudice, economic hardship, and institutional barriers. Yet, rather than being crushed under the weight of these obstacles, he harnessed them to his advantage. Gladwell begins by setting the stage for Flom's journey, describing the legal landscape of mid-20th century America. At that time, the big law firms were steeped in tradition, favoring old line, WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, clientele and partners, while leaving little room for the bright, but different, minds of minority communities. For many Jewish lawyers, the conventional legal career was a dead end. But for Flom, this exclusion turned into a golden opportunity. Rather than compete head-to-head with firms that weren't interested in him, he found and created a niche where his unique background, perspectives, and relentless energy were assets rather than liabilities. Gladwell explains that Flom's success is not simply the result of individual brilliance. It is the product of a perfect storm of timing, circumstance, and cultural factors. In essence, 3 key lessons emerge from his life story: the importance of demographic luck and timing, the hidden benefits of cultural legacy, and the transformative power of hard work channeled into a niche. Each lesson not only defines Flom's career, but also offers a window into the broader forces that shape success in America. Point 2. Lesson 1. Demographic luck and the power of timing. One of the most striking insights from Flom's journey is the role that demographic luck plays in shaping destiny. Gladwell introduces this first lesson by arguing that the era in which you're born and the historical circumstances that surround your coming of age can be as influential as personal talent. Flom's generation, for instance, was uniquely positioned. He was born at a time when the traditional legal market was in flux, and when the influx of immigrants was reshaping the social and economic fabric of New York. At this juncture in history, the old guard's unwillingness to hire Jewish lawyers did not merely close doors, it inadvertently opened them in other, less regulated corners of the legal world. Flom and his contemporaries found themselves forced into areas of law that the established firms considered unseemly or unprofitable, such as proxy fights and corporate takeovers. What might have been seen as a disadvantage, being excluded from the conventional paths, became the very crucible in which Flom honed his expertise. Because he was forced to practice in these forbidden fields, he not only mastered a niche, but eventually turned it into a dominant force in corporate law. Gladwell's analysis reveals that Flom's success was not solely due to his inherent legal acumen. It was also a matter of being born into the right moment. The shifting demographics and evolving economic landscape of post-war America meant that traditional routes to success were drying up for many, while new, unconventional pathways were emerging. In this context, the very obstacles that could have derailed Flom's career instead provided him with an unexpected advantage. The timing was perfect. The legal industry was ripe for disruption, and the talents of those who were previously marginalized became invaluable in reshaping the market. This lesson challenges the myth of the self-made man by demonstrating that success is not achieved in a vacuum. It is deeply intertwined with historical and demographic forces that, while outside of any one individual's control, can make all the difference in the world. For every Joe Flom, there are countless others who might have thrived under different circumstances, if only the timing had been right. It's a reminder that the opportunities we encounter are often the product of forces far larger than ourselves. 3. Lesson 2. The hidden benefits of cultural legacy. The second lesson Flom's story teaches us is about the hidden, often underestimated power of cultural legacy. For many years, mainstream society dismissed the cultural practices of immigrant communities as inferior or peripheral. Yet, in Flom's case, his Jewish heritage became a powerful asset that shaped his work ethic, his approach to problem solving, and his ability to persevere against overwhelming odds. Gladwell delves into the cultural values that have been passed down through generations among Jewish immigrants. One of the most significant is the tradition of learning and intellectual engagement. Despite facing discrimination and exclusion, Jewish families often placed a premium on education and hard work, fostering an environment in which intellectual achievement was both a duty and a means of upward mobility. This cultural emphasis on scholarship, combined with the historical experience of having to outwork and outsmart exclusionary systems, instilled in Flom a resilience and determination that proved critical in his legal career. Flom's cultural background also influenced the way he viewed the world. Raised in a community that valued perseverance and resourcefulness, he was conditioned to see obstacles not as dead ends, but as challenges to be overcome. His upbringing instilled in him a kind of practical wisdom, a street-smart savvy that enabled him to navigate complex social and professional landscapes. This wasn't the kind of intelligence measured by an IQ test. It was a deep, experiential understanding of how to thrive in environments that were stacked against you. Moreover, Gladwell points out that cultural legacy can provide unexpected benefits in a competitive environment. For Flom, being part of a community that was accustomed to operating on the margins of the mainstream meant he was more willing to take risks and pursue unconventional strategies. When traditional law firms rejected him, his cultural heritage provided a kind of insulation, a set of values that celebrated ingenuity and hard work over conformity. In a way, his background made him more adaptable and willing to explore areas of law that others ignored. This lesson is a powerful rebuttal to the narrow, often dismissive view of immigrant cultures. Rather than being a disadvantage, Flom's cultural heritage turned out to be a wellspring of strength and innovation. It reminds us that the traditions, values, and historical experiences passed down from previous generations can serve as a hidden reservoir of talent, a reservoir that, when tapped, can propel individuals to extraordinary heights of success. 4. Lesson 3. Niche specialization and the power of hard work. The final lesson of Joe Flom's story is perhaps the most personal. The idea that true success is built on a foundation of relentless hard work and a willingness to specialize in a niche where others fear to tread. Flom's career is a testament to the fact that when you combine determination with a willingness to embrace challenges that others shun, you can create your own path to greatness. Because the traditional avenues of legal practice were largely closed off to him, Flom was forced to develop expertise in areas that were considered less prestigious by the old guard. Fields like proxy fights and hostile takeovers. These were areas of law that many firms regarded as unsavory, but they were precisely the domains where Flom could excel. His willingness to work in these unpopular fields, combined with a tireless commitment to mastering every nuance of the practice, allowed him to build a reputation as the go-to lawyer for complex, high-stakes corporate battles. Gladwell's narrative here is a clear demonstration of the accumulative advantage principle. Flom's early setbacks, his exclusion from elite law firms, meant that he had to start at the bottom, working on cases that no one else wanted. But rather than being discouraged, he embraced these opportunities. Every case, every challenge, and every long night in the office added to his expertise. Over time, this relentless accumulation of experience transformed him into a specialist whose skills were in high demand. The very areas that once marked him as an outsider eventually became the very things that set him apart as a leader in corporate law. This lesson is a powerful reminder that hard work and persistence can turn even a disadvantage into a competitive edge. It's not enough to be smart or talented. You must be willing to put in the hours and to persist in the face of rejection and setbacks. Flom's story shows that by carving out a niche and committing to it fully, even if it seems less glamorous at first, you can build a legacy that defies the odds. Moreover, the story of Joe Flom underscores the idea that success often comes to those who are willing to do what others won't. In a system that rewards conformity and traditional pathways, the courage to venture off the beaten track can be the difference between mediocrity and greatness. Flom's journey is a lesson in how determination, when combined with a strategic focus on an underserved niche, can create opportunities that are inaccessible to those who merely follow the crowd. Broader implications. Redefining the American Dream. Joe Flom's life story is not just a case study in legal success. It's a microcosm of the broader American experience. His journey challenges the simplistic notion that success is solely the product of individual talent and effort. Instead, it reveals that a host of external factors, demographic timing, cultural legacy, and the ability to exploit niche opportunities, play critical roles in shaping a career that in the American narrative. The self-made man is often portrayed as someone who overcomes all obstacles through grit and determination. While Flom's story certainly embodies these qualities, it also highlights the systemic forces that can make or break a career. The fact that Flom's success was partially a result of being born at a time when the legal market was in flux, coupled with the cultural strengths he inherited as a Jewish immigrant, underscores the idea that opportunity is not distributed evenly. It is the interplay of these external factors with personal effort that ultimately defines success. For policymakers, educators, and business leaders, this chapter offers a sobering lesson. To create a truly equitable society, we must recognize and address the hidden forces that shape opportunity. Flom's story suggests that when barriers are removed and alternative pathways are created, individuals who might otherwise be sidelined can rise to prominence. It's a call to rethink how we design our institutions and support systems, whether in education, the workplace, or the broader economy, to ensure that talent is nurtured in all its diverse forms. The broader implication here is that the American dream, as traditionally conceived, is far more complex than the myth of the self-made individual. It's a mosaic of personal determination, cultural heritage, and the often overlooked forces of timing and opportunity. By acknowledging these factors, we can begin to create a society that doesn't simply celebrate isolated success stories, but works actively to level the playing field for everyone. Conclusion. Lessons that transcend a single career. As we close the chapter on Joe Flom's remarkable journey, 3 key lessons emerge that resonate far beyond the confines of the legal profession. First, demographic luck and timing are forces that can dramatically influence the trajectory of one's life. Factors that, while beyond individual control, create the conditions for opportunity. Second, cultural legacy is a double-edged sword. It can impose limitations, but it can also furnish individuals with a unique set of values and strengths that propel them forward. And third, there is no substitute for hard work and the willingness to specialize in a niche where you can become the undisputed expert. The Flom story is a powerful reminder that the path to success is rarely linear. It is forged through a combination of external circumstances and personal determination, of forces that shape who we are even before we take our first steps in the world. For those who find themselves on the margins, much like Flom once did, his journey offers hope that by embracing one's background, seizing the unique opportunities presented by one's time, and committing fully to one's craft, greatness is not only possible, it is inevitable. This chapter challenges the romanticized view of the self-made genius and invites us to adopt a more nuanced understanding of success, one that acknowledges the intricate tapestry of luck, culture, and relentless effort that underpins every great achievement. For Americans who believe in the promise of opportunity and the power of hard work, Joe Flom's life stands as a testament to what is possible when you dare to forge your own path. Final reflections. In The Three Lessons of Joe Flom. Malcolm Gladwell dismantles conventional narratives about success and genius. He shows us that behind every towering achievement lies a story of external forces converging with personal resolve. It's not enough to be brilliant on paper. One must also be in the right place at the right time, imbued with a cultural legacy that fuels perseverance, and willing to work relentlessly in a niche that others have shunned. Joe Flom's life is more than a tale of legal triumph. It is a microcosm of the American experience, where the interplay of timing, culture, and hard work can transform obstacles into opportunities. As we reflect on the lessons gleaned from his journey, we are reminded that success is not a solitary achievement, but the culmination of a lifetime of unseen advantages, sacrifices, and the courage to pursue a path less traveled. For anyone striving to achieve their own version of the American dream, Flom's story serves as both inspiration and instruction. It teaches us that our backgrounds, our eras, and our willingness to work in areas that others overlook are not liabilities, but potent sources of strength. In a country that prides itself on meritocracy, understanding these lessons can help us build systems and communities where every individual has a fair shot at success. Imagine a rugged Appalachian Valley where the echo of ancient feuds still resonates in every handshake and every whispered word. Picture a place where your reputation isn't just a matter of pride. It's a survival tool, a shield against the harsh realities of a world built on honor and personal valor. In Harlan, Kentucky, Malcolm Gladwell transports us to a remote corner of America where centuries-old traditions shape behavior in ways that defy modern logic. This chapter isn't about the glitz of Wall Street or Silicon Valley innovation. It's about raw, visceral culture, a culture forged in the crucible of isolation, hardship, and the need to defend one's name at any cost. Get ready to journey into the mountains of Kentucky, where honor isn't an abstract idea, but the very air people breathe. Setting the scene. The rugged landscape of Harlan, Kentucky. At the base of the Appalachian Mountains lies Harlan, Kentucky, a region defined by its isolation, its steep hills, and a history of economic hardship. Here, in the shadow of coal mines and the echoes of generations of miners and farmers, a unique cultural blueprint took root. Gladwell begins by painting a vivid picture of Harlan's landscape, a rugged, unforgiving terrain where communities have long been cut off from the broader currents of modern society. In such an environment, survival depends not only on physical toughness, but also on an uncompromising code of honor. In Harlan, family ties run deep, and personal reputation is everything. With limited law enforcement and few modern institutions, residents have long relied on their own sense of justice and personal accountability. When disputes arise, whether over land, honor, or even a perceived slight, the response is swift and often violent. The culture of honor here is not merely a relic of the past. It's a living, breathing code that dictates every aspect of daily life. For the people of Harlan, to show weakness is to invite exploitation, and to fail in defending one's honor can mean social exile or even physical harm. Point 2. The roots of a culture of honor. Gladwell explores how history, geography, and economics all contributed to the formation of this distinctive culture. In Harlan, generations of families lived in close-knit, isolated communities where formal legal institutions were weak or absent. In such settings, personal feuds were settled not in the courts but on the front porch or in the back of a pickup truck. This necessity to fend for oneself and one's family bred a culture where reputation was paramount. If you were known as someone who would not back down from a challenge, you earned a certain respect, even fear, from your neighbors. The chapter explains that this culture of honor has deep historical roots. Descendants of settlers brought with them traditions from the Old World, a legacy of honor, pride, and personal retribution that was adapted to the new, rugged frontier. Over time, these traditions hardened into an unwritten set of rules that governed every interaction. Even today, the echoes of those early days can be seen in the way disputes are handled and how respect is measured by the willingness to stand up for oneself. In Harlan, honor isn't just an abstract ideal. It's a practical tool for survival in an environment where help from outside is scarce. Gladwell also contrasts the culture of Harlan with more urban, anonymous settings. In big cities, modern institutions like police and courts mediate conflicts. In the mountains, however, individuals are left to their own devices. The absence of external arbitrators forces residents to develop their own methods of conflict resolution, even if those methods sometimes escalate into violence. In such a climate, every slight, no matter how minor it may seem to an outsider, can trigger a chain reaction of retaliatory behavior. 3. The dynamics of violence and retaliation. One of the most compelling sections of Harlan, Kentucky, is Gladwell's analysis of how the culture of honor translates into patterns of violence. In a place where reputation is everything, an insult isn't just a bad word, it's a challenge. When someone's honor is questioned, the only acceptable response is to strike back, often with considerable force. Gladwell illustrates this dynamic through numerous anecdotes of feuds that have torn families apart, showing that the desire to restore one's honor can override common sense or the desire for peace. In Harlan, even minor disputes can spiral into prolonged cycles of retribution. A whispered insult, a perceived snub at a family gathering, or even the failure to show proper deference can spark violence. The underlying logic is simple. If you allow your honor to be trampled without a fight, you signal to others that you are weak. And in an environment where weakness can invite further exploitation, the price of inaction is simply too high. Thus, violence becomes not an aberration but a predictable outcome of a culture that places so much value on personal repute. Gladwell shows that these patterns aren't random. They're the product of a well-worn script that generations have followed. When someone retaliates, it sets off a chain reaction, a series of acts that can continue for years, sometimes even decades. The initial spark might be trivial, but once it's lit, the flames of retribution can engulf entire families or communities. This cycle of violence serves a social function. It enforces the rules of the culture, ensuring that everyone knows the cost of disrespect. Yet, it also exacts a heavy toll, leaving scars, both physical and emotional, that can persist long after the conflict is over. 4. Economic hardship and the reinforcement of honor. Another key factor in the formation of Harlan's culture is economic hardship. The region has long been marked by poverty and limited economic opportunity, conditions that intensify the need for a personal code of conduct. In environments where resources are scarce and competition is fierce, every individual must fight tooth and nail for survival. This economic pressure reinforces the culture of honor. When you have little to lose, every affront becomes a potential threat to your already precarious well-being. In Harlan, the scarcity of jobs and the constant struggle to make ends meet create a situation where social standing is directly linked to one's ability to secure economic survival. A reputation for toughness can open doors, a job offer, respect from peers, or simply the assurance that you won't be pushed around. Conversely, a reputation for weakness can leave you vulnerable, with fewer allies and fewer opportunities to improve your lot in life. Thus, the pressures of economic hardship intertwine with the cultural imperatives of honor, creating a self-reinforcing system where every interaction is a test of one's resolve. Gladwell argues that this dynamic isn't unique to Harlan. It can be found in many isolated, economically depressed regions. However, in Harlan, the combination of harsh geography, historical isolation, and economic deprivation created a particularly potent blend, a culture where honor was not just a moral ideal, but a practical necessity. The struggle for economic survival and the need to assert one's dignity became inextricably linked, forging a way of life that has profound implications for how people interact even in modern times. The legacy of a violent past and its modern echoes. While the chapter primarily focuses on historical and cultural forces, Gladwell also draws connections between Harlan's past and the modern world. The same impulses that once governed feuds in the mountains can still be observed in contemporary settings, albeit in more subtle forms. The legacy of a culture of honor can influence behavior in urban environments, in the boardrooms of major corporations, and even in everyday interpersonal conflicts. For example, Gladwell notes that the same emphasis on reputation and the need to respond to perceived slights can be seen in modern culture wars or in the competitive dynamics of high-stakes business environments. In these contexts, although physical violence is rare, the underlying logic remains the same. A challenge to one's status must be met with an assertive response. The echoes of Harlan's culture are thus not confined to the isolated valleys of Kentucky. They reverberate through broader American society, influencing how people perceive respect, competition, and success. This connection is especially resonant in today's world, where social media and digital communication have amplified every slight and insult. In many ways, the instantaneous, often impersonal nature of online interactions can trigger responses that mirror the traditional culture of honor. When someone's reputation is attacked in a public forum, the call to defend one's honor is immediate and visceral. Gladwell's exploration of Harlan thus serves as a reminder that the cultural forces shaping our behavior are deep-rooted, and that even as society modernizes, the ancient codes of honor continue to influence our interactions in unexpected ways. 6. Implications for understanding American identity. The chapter on Harlan, Kentucky, is not merely an exploration of a remote cultural enclave. It also offers profound insights into the broader American character. The United States is a nation of immigrants, many of whom came from regions with strong cultures of honor and self-reliance. The legacy of these traditions can be seen in various aspects of American life, from the competitive spirit of sports teams to the fierce individualism celebrated in political rhetoric. Gladwell's analysis challenges us to reconsider what we mean by merit and success. In a society that prides itself on egalitarian ideals and equal opportunity, the reality is often more complicated. The cultural forces that shape behavior in Harlan are a microcosm of larger societal dynamics, forces that continue to influence how people perceive fairness, authority, and personal responsibility. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for anyone who wants to grasp the complexities of American identity. It reveals that what we often take for granted, our sense of fairness, our expectations of behavior, and our definitions of success, are all deeply colored by historical and cultural legacies that extend far beyond the urban centers of modern America. Moreover, the Harlan example serves as a cautionary tale about the unintended consequences of cultural isolation and economic deprivation. While the rugged individualism celebrated in American lore has many virtues, it can also foster environments where violence and retribution become the norm. Recognizing this duality is essential for building a more inclusive society, one that values both personal responsibility and collective well-being. 7. Rethinking conflict and community in a modern world. One of the most enduring lessons from Harlan is the need to rethink how we address conflict. In a culture where honor demands retaliation, disputes can quickly escalate into destructive cycles that tear communities apart. Gladwell's exploration of Harlan forces us to confront a difficult truth. The mechanisms we use to settle conflicts may be deeply influenced by cultural legacies that no longer serve us well in a modern, interconnected society. In contemporary America, where formal institutions are supposed to mediate disputes, the vestiges of a culture of honor can still manifest in unexpected ways. Whether it's a contentious political debate or a bitter personal falling out, the impulse to defend one's reputation at all costs can hinder dialogue and reconciliation. The Harlan model reminds us that effective conflict resolution requires more than just rules and regulations. It demands a shift in cultural norms, a move toward understanding and empathy. By examining the roots of Harlan's violent feuds, we can gain valuable insights into how to create environments that encourage compromise over confrontation, community over isolation. 8. The power of environment. How place shapes behavior. A recurring theme in Harlan, Kentucky, is the undeniable influence of environment on human behavior. The harsh geography, the scarcity of resources, and the isolation of the Appalachian valleys all contributed to the development of a culture that prized toughness and self-reliance. Gladwell makes a compelling case that the physical and economic environment is not just a backdrop to human activity. It actively shapes the values, norms, and behaviors of the people who live within it. This idea has broad implications beyond Harlan. It suggests that to understand behavior, whether in a small mountain town or in a sprawling metropolis, we must pay close attention to the environmental context. In America, regions as diverse as Silicon Valley, the Rust Belt, and the Deep South each cultivate their own distinct cultures, molded by local conditions. Harlan, Kentucky, stands out as a powerful example of how environment can forge a unique set of social codes. Codes that, while adaptive in one context, may prove problematic in another. Recognizing this dynamic is crucial for anyone seeking to build policies or systems that are responsive to the needs of diverse communities. Point 9. Final reflections. Lessons from the mountains. As we draw this chapter to a close, the story of Harlan, Kentucky, offers us much more than a glimpse into a bygone era. It provides a framework for understanding how culture, environment, and history intersect to shape human behavior in ways that still resonate today. The code of honor that once governed feuds in the Appalachian Hills is not confined to dusty history books. It lives on in subtle forms throughout American society, influencing everything from personal relationships to political discourse. Gladwell's journey into Harlan is a call to examine our own cultural assumptions. It challenges us to recognize that our behaviors, our values, and our expectations are not simply products of individual choice. They are also the legacy of our collective past. For modern Americans striving to build a more just and cohesive society, the lessons of Harlan are both humbling and instructive. They remind us that while personal responsibility is vital, we must also be mindful of the cultural forces that shape our lives and work actively to transform those forces when they no longer serve the common good. In Harlan, honor was not an abstract ideal. It was a matter of life and death. Today, as we navigate the complexities of a rapidly changing world, the need for a more nuanced understanding of honor, conflict, and community has never been greater. By learning from the past, we can begin to reimagine a future where the values of fairness, empathy, and collaboration replace the old, rigid codes of retaliation and isolation. Conclusion. The enduring legacy of Harlan, Kentucky. Harlan, Kentucky stands as a vivid illustration of how environment and history converge to create a culture that defies easy explanation. In this remote corner of America, the struggle for survival, the constant threat of violence, and the imperative to defend one's honor have left an indelible mark on the community's identity. Malcolm Gladwell's exploration of Harlan challenges us to look beyond the surface of individual behavior and to see the deeper forces at work. Forces that continue to shape our society in both overt and subtle ways. For those of us who believe in the promise of the American dream, the story of Harlan is a reminder that success and behavior are not solely the products of individual effort. They are also the outcomes of a complex interplay between cultural legacy, environmental pressures, and historical circumstance. As we strive to create a society that is both just and prosperous, we must acknowledge and address these underlying forces, learning from the rugged resilience of Harlan while working to build a future that values cooperation over conflict. In the end, the mountains of Harlan, Kentucky, whisper timeless truths about the human condition, that honor, in its truest form, is not something you inherit passively, but something you earn, and sometimes something you must reinvent for a new era. Final Thoughts. Chapter 6. Harlan, Kentucky, invites us to step away from the conventional narratives of success and to embrace a more complex understanding of how culture and environment shape our lives. In the rugged hills of Kentucky, where every gesture and word is imbued with the weight of tradition, we find a microcosm of the broader American experience. It is a story of survival, of honor defended and sometimes lost, and of the ways in which our surroundings can forge our values in the crucible of hardship. It be why delving into the origins and consequences of the culture of honor in Harlan, Gladwell challenges us to rethink our assumptions about violence, respect, and the true cost of maintaining one's reputation. It is a journey into the heart of a community that, despite its isolation and economic challenges, offers profound insights into the resilience and complexity of human nature. For modern society, grappling with its own conflicts and divisions, the lessons of Harlan are both a warning and a guide, a reminder that understanding the past is essential to building a better future. Imagine a cockpit high above the clouds, a confined space where split-second decisions determine the fate of hundreds of lives. Now picture the subtle interplay of language, cultural norms, and authorities shaping every word exchanged between the pilot and co-pilot. In The Ethnic Theory of Plane Crashes, Malcolm Gladwell dives deep into how cultural legacies and communication styles in high-stakes aviation environments can set the stage for catastrophe. Far from a tale about faulty technology or human error alone, this chapter reveals that the very way we speak and the unspoken rules behind our speech can sometimes lead to disaster. Here, the dynamics of respect, deference, and hierarchy aren't just cultural trivia. They're factors that can literally determine who lives and who dies. Setting the scene, the high-stakes world of the modern cockpit. Gladwell begins by transporting us into the heart of aviation, a world where precision, teamwork, and flawless communication are non-negotiable. In an era when commercial aviation is one of the safest modes of travel, the rare occurrence of a catastrophic plane crash forces us to ask, if pilots are among the best-trained professionals on Earth, why do these disasters still happen? The answer, as Gladwell reveals, isn't simply a matter of technical failure or isolated human error. Instead, he argues that deep-seated cultural factors are at play, factors that influence how pilots interact under extreme pressure. He explains that in many plane crashes, the failure isn't in the machinery but in the communication. In the cockpit, where every word carries weight and every instruction could be the difference between safe flight and disaster, the way information is relayed is critical. Here, subtle cues, intonation, hesitation, and even silence can indicate a breakdown in teamwork. And as Gladwell shows, these breakdowns are not random. They are often the product of ingrained cultural norms regarding authority and deference. Point 2. Culture and communication. The role of power distance. In the cockpit, one of the central concepts Gladwell introduces is power distance, a term borrowed from social psychology that describes how different cultures handle hierarchy and authority. In low-power distance cultures, such as many Western nations, subordinates are more likely to question superiors and offer feedback even when it might seem confrontational. In contrast, high-power distance cultures emphasize strict deference to authority, where questioning a superior can be seen as disrespectful or even taboo. Gladwell argues that these cultural differences can have profound implications in the cockpit. In many aviation incidents involving crews from high-power distance cultures, co-pilots and other crew members may hesitate to challenge or even question a captain's decisions, even when those decisions appear to be heading toward dangerous territory. This reluctance is not born of a lack of competence. Rather, it is a learned behavior, deeply embedded in the cultural fabric of the crew's upbringing. For example, Gladwell recounts incidents involving pilots from cultures where hierarchy is paramount, where even if a junior crew member notices a glaring error or miscommunication, they may remain silent out of respect for the captain's authority. In the high-pressure environment of a cockpit, where communication must be open and direct, this deference can stifle critical dialogue. The result is a dangerous echo chamber in which mistakes go unchallenged until it is too late. 3. The anatomy of a breakdown. Case studies from the skies. To illustrate his point, Gladwell delves into specific case studies of plane crashes where communication failures played a pivotal role. In one notable example, a routine flight turned tragic when subtle miscommunication spiraled into a full-blown crisis. The captain's instructions were delivered in a manner that assumed absolute compliance, yet the co-pilot's hesitance to question or clarify these instructions resulted in a cascade of errors. Gladwell details how these incidents are not isolated anomalies but rather symptomatic of a broader, systemic issue. In several cases, the investigative reports reveal that the cockpit crews involved came from cultural backgrounds where questioning authority was not the norm. In these environments, the hierarchical structure in the cockpit is so rigid that even when a potential error is recognized, it is buried under layers of deference and protocol. The tragedy is compounded by the fact that modern aviation relies on teamwork and the free flow of information, a stark contrast to the silence enforced by cultural norms of high power distance. These case studies serve as a stark reminder that even in an industry as technologically advanced and safety-conscious as aviation, human factors remain the most unpredictable variable. They force us to confront a hard truth, that the way we communicate is not solely a personal trait but a product of cultural inheritance. In a cockpit, where lives depend on clear, assertive communication, any deviation from this ideal, even if culturally understandable, can have fatal consequences. Point 4. The historical roots of communication styles in aviation. Gladwell doesn't stop at identifying the problem. He digs into its origins. The communication styles observed in the cockpit are not accidental. They are the result of centuries of cultural evolution, shaped by factors as diverse as historical power structures, educational systems, and even regional conflicts. In many high-power distance cultures, the relationship between a teacher and a student, or between a boss and a subordinate, is governed by an unspoken understanding that the authority figure's word is final. This dynamic carries over into professional life, including aviation. Pilots and crew members who were raised in such environments internalize these norms early on, so that in the cockpit, they may be less inclined to speak up even when something is clearly amiss. Gladwell points out that this isn't a deficiency in character, it's a reflection of the social and educational systems that instill these values. It's a reminder that even highly skilled professionals are, in many ways, products of their cultural environment, a reality that has significant implications for safety-critical industries. Gladwell also explores how these ingrained habits persist even when individuals are trained in more modern, westernized settings. Many pilots undergo rigorous training that emphasizes clear, concise communication and the importance of questioning when necessary. Yet, when their cultural conditioning clashes with these protocols, the tension can manifest in subtle, yet dangerous, ways. This internal conflict highlights a crucial point. Technical training alone cannot override deeply embedded cultural norms. To truly address these issues, the aviation industry must reckon with the cultural dimensions of communication and find ways to bridge these gaps. Overcoming the barriers, strategies for better cockpit communication. One of the more hopeful aspects of this chapter is Gladwell's exploration of solutions. Recognizing the problem is the first step, but what can be done to overcome these cultural barriers? Gladwell discusses how the aviation industry has begun to address these issues head-on. Through specialized training programs, airlines have started to emphasize what is often referred to as crew resource management, CRM. CRM training focuses on fostering an environment where every crew member feels empowered to speak up, regardless of rank. It encourages open dialogue and teaches pilots and co-pilots how to communicate assertively yet respectfully, ensuring that crucial information is shared even in the most stressful situations. This approach is designed to counteract the negative effects of high power distance by deliberately flattening the traditional hierarchy in the cockpit. Gladwell provides examples of airlines that have seen tangible improvements in safety records after implementing CRM protocols. These programs are not just about following checklists, they are about changing the mindset of the crew. By creating a culture where questioning and double-checking are normalized, the industry can reduce the risk of miscommunication and ensure that every voice is heard. This evolution in cockpit communication is a testament to the possibility of cultural change, even in fields where traditional hierarchies have long reigned supreme. The broader implications, culture, communication, and the American workplace. While the focus of this chapter is on aviation, the lessons extend far beyond the cockpit. The dynamics that lead to catastrophic plane crashes are, in many ways, a microcosm of broader issues in the American workplace and society. In any organization where hierarchy is rigid and open communication is stifled, there is a risk that critical information may be lost or ignored. Gladwell's analysis forces us to confront a broader cultural question. How can we create environments, whether in corporate boardrooms, military units, or government agencies, where people feel comfortable challenging authority when necessary? The answer, he suggests, lies in understanding and addressing the cultural underpinnings of communication. In a society that values both individual achievement and collective success, the ability to share information freely and to question decisions in real time is essential. This broader perspective has significant implications for American businesses. In today's rapidly changing economic landscape, companies that encourage open dialogue and value diverse perspectives are often the most innovative and resilient. By contrast, organizations that cling to outdated hierarchies risk missing out on critical insights and falling behind in a competitive market. Gladwell's chapter is a powerful call to action for leaders across all industries to reevaluate their communication practices, to foster environments where every team member's input is valued, and ultimately, to build cultures that are both inclusive and dynamic. Point 7. Challenging the myth of cultural determinism, it's important to note that Gladwell does not advocate for a simplistic view in which one culture is inherently better or worse than another. Rather, he challenges the notion that cultural practices are fixed and unchangeable. While it's true that certain communication styles are deeply rooted in cultural history, Gladwell shows that these patterns can evolve over time. For example, he highlights how many Asian airlines have made significant strides in transforming cockpit communication by adopting CRM training, even while maintaining other cultural traditions. This evolution demonstrates that while cultural legacies are powerful, they are not destiny. By recognizing the challenges posed by traditional communication styles, organizations can take deliberate steps to modify them and mitigate their risks. Gladwell's nuanced approach reminds us that culture is not a monolith. It is a living, evolving set of practices that can be reshaped through education, training, and intentional effort. The key takeaway is that by understanding the cultural roots of communication, we can design interventions that preserve the positive aspects of a culture while eliminating the factors that lead to failure in high-stakes environments. This balance is crucial for ensuring safety not only in aviation but across all sectors where teamwork and clear communication are paramount. Point 8. The American response, embracing directness and accountability. In the United States, the cultural norm tends to favor directness and accountability, a stark contrast to the more deferential communication styles observed in some other parts of the world. Gladwell points out that this American ideal of speaking up has been a cornerstone of many successful enterprises and institutions. It's a quality that has contributed to the country's innovation and leadership in numerous fields. Yet, even in America, challenges remain. In large organizations with entrenched hierarchies, the tendency to defer to authority can creep in, sometimes subtly, and impede the free flow of critical information. Gladwell's analysis of cockpit communication serves as a reminder that even in cultures that prize directness, vigilance is required to maintain an environment where everyone feels empowered to contribute. The American response, he argues, should be to continue reinforcing practices that encourage open dialogue and to recognize that the cost of silence can be extraordinarily high. This commitment to directness is not just a matter of corporate policy, it reflects a broader social value. In a democracy that prides itself on transparency and accountability, ensuring that every voice is heard is essential to the functioning of society. Gladwell's exploration of the ethnic theory of plane crashes, therefore, offers lessons that resonate far beyond aviation, prompting us to ask how we can build institutions that are both effective and inclusive. Point 9. Final reflections. When culture and technology collide. As we reach the end of the ethnic theory of plane crashes, Gladwell leaves us with a complex picture of how culture, communication, and technology interact in critical moments. On one hand, modern aviation technology has made flying safer than ever before. On the other, the human element, shaped by cultural habits and social norms, remains the most unpredictable factor. In the confined space of a cockpit, where every second counts, the way individuals interact can mean the difference between a successful flight and a tragic accident. This collision between culture and technology forces us to rethink our assumptions about safety. It is not enough to build better planes or develop more advanced instruments if the human operators are hampered by communication barriers rooted in cultural tradition. Instead, the solution lies in integrating technological advancement with a deep understanding of human behavior, an approach that recognizes the importance of both innovation and empathy. Gladwell's analysis challenges us to consider that the future of safety in high-stakes environments depends not only on cutting-edge technology but also on our willingness to address the cultural dimensions of communication. Whether in the skies, in the boardroom, or in everyday life, the ability to listen, question, and speak up is an indispensable asset, one that must be nurtured if we are to prevent tragedies before they occur. Conclusion. Lessons for a safer, more open future. The ethnic theory of plane crashes offers a powerful exploration of how deep-seated cultural norms can influence critical outcomes in unexpected ways. Through detailed case studies and incisive analysis, Malcolm Gladwell reveals that the way we communicate, shaped by history, tradition, and social conditioning, can have life-or-death consequences in the modern world. By examining the role of power distance and the reluctance to question authority in the cockpit, Gladwell provides a compelling argument for rethinking how we structure communication in high-stakes environments. His insights are a call to action for the aviation industry and beyond, to embrace training methods that flatten hierarchies, empower every team member, and ensure that critical information flows freely, regardless of rank or cultural background. For modern America, these lessons resonate deeply. They challenge us to examine our own institutions and to question whether the systems we rely on to safeguard our lives are truly optimized for the realities of human behavior. In doing so, Gladwell not only exposes the hidden cost of cultural deference but also offers a roadmap for how to build a safer, more open future, one in which every voice is valued and every life is protected. Final thoughts. Chapter 7 of Outliers. The ethnic theory of plane crashes is a profound meditation on the intersection of culture, communication, and technology. It teaches us that even in an era of remarkable technical achievement, the human element remains our greatest vulnerability. The chapter compels us to acknowledge that our cultural legacies, shaped over centuries, continue to influence the most critical moments of our lives, often in ways we may not fully appreciate. For anyone invested in the promise of safety, innovation, and progress, the message is clear. Understanding and overcoming our cultural predispositions is not merely an academic exercise. It is a practical necessity. By embracing training, open dialogue, and a willingness to question authority when needed, we can create environments where technology and humanity work in harmony, ensuring that the skies remain as safe as our aspirations for a better, more connected world. Imagine waking up before dawn in a vast, dewy rice paddy, where every drop of sweat is a testament to generations of relentless labor. Now, fast forward to a modern classroom in East Asia, where students labor over complex math problems with the same diligence once reserved for tending to rice fields. In Rice Paddies and Math Tests, Malcolm Gladwell reveals a striking connection between the age-old practices of rice cultivation and the extraordinary performance of Asian students on math tests. This isn't a tale of genetic destiny or mysterious innate ability, it's a story of culture, hard work, and a set of values honed over centuries that continue to shape minds and influence academic success. Introduction. Cultivating a mindset of diligence and detail. In this chapter, Gladwell turns his analytical gaze toward the world of education, specifically the performance gap in math tests between East Asian students and their Western counterparts. At first glance, the phenomenal math skills exhibited by many students in countries like China, Japan, and Korea might seem to stem from some inherent, inborn superiority. However, Gladwell challenges that narrative by linking these outcomes to the cultural legacy of rice cultivation, a tradition that demands persistence, meticulous attention to detail, and a willingness to engage in painstaking, repetitive labor. He argues that the cultural ethos that evolved around rice paddies has seeped into the very fabric of society. In regions where rice farming was not merely an occupation but a way of life, the virtues of hard work, patience, and collective perseverance became deeply embedded. These values, Gladwell suggests, are passed down from generation to generation and later manifest in the classroom, where the same principles help students excel in subjects that require sustained mental effort, particularly mathematics. Point 2. The historical roots of rice cultivation, a labor of precision and perseverance. To understand the link between rice paddies and math tests, we must first delve into the historical and agricultural context. Rice cultivation is a demanding enterprise. Unlike crops that can be harvested relatively quickly or with minimal effort, rice requires constant attention. The planting, tending, and harvesting of rice are tasks that demand repetitive precision, endurance, and a relentless work ethic. Every season, farmers must contend with unpredictable weather, pests, and the laborious maintenance of water levels in their fields. This grueling process instills a mindset where every small detail matters. A misstep, a delayed planting, an improperly managed water supply, or a lapse in care can lead to a disastrous loss. Over time, the necessity for precision and the endurance to perform laborious tasks shape not only individual habits but also community values. The collective memory of generations of rice farmers becomes a cultural asset, one that prizes diligence and attention to detail over shortcuts or complacency. Gladwell draws a parallel between this ancient labor and the modern classroom. In a culture where hard work is not just a means to an end but a way of life, the approach to learning naturally mirrors the painstaking efforts required in rice cultivation. The same discipline, patience, and willingness to repeat tasks until perfection is achieved become hallmarks of academic practice, particularly in mathematics, where complex problem-solving often demands persistent, iterative work. 3. The educational environment. How hard work translates to math mastery. East Asian education systems, influenced by their agrarian past, emphasize a level of rigor and commitment that is rarely seen in Western schools. In these classrooms, the value of practice is paramount. Students are encouraged and expected to put in long hours of study, often with a focus on mastering repetitive drills and problem sets. This practice-oriented approach is not merely about rote learning. It's about cultivating an attitude where persistent effort is seen as both virtuous and necessary for success. Gladwell points out that the skills honed on the rice paddies, meticulous attention to detail, an unwavering commitment to hard work, and a methodical approach to problem-solving find a natural outlet in math. In mathematics, Unlike many other subjects, there is often a clear, objective measure of success, the correct answer. The discipline required to arrive at that answer mirrors the precision required to harvest a successful crop of rice. When a student works through countless math problems, each error is viewed not as a personal failure but as an opportunity to learn and improve, a perspective deeply rooted in a culture that values incremental progress over instant perfection. This relentless practice, often accumulating to what Gladwell might call thousands of hours, is what enables students to develop a near-automatic facility with numbers and formulas. It is not that these students are born with a natural mathematical genius. Rather, they have been conditioned by their culture to persist, repeat, and refine their skills until proficiency is achieved. This explains why, on international assessments like TIMSS, Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study, Asian students consistently outperform their Western peers. Point 4. The cultural legacy of hard work. Beyond innate ability, a key insight of this chapter is the debunking of the myth that superior performance on math tests is solely a function of innate intelligence. Instead, Gladwell emphasizes that cultural legacy plays an enormous role in shaping outcomes. The work ethic that originates from centuries of rice cultivation teaches individuals that mastery is achieved through effort and perseverance, not through shortcuts or reliance on natural talent. In many East Asian communities, the cultural narrative extols the virtue of hard work. Parents and educators stress that intelligence can be developed through dedicated effort, and the emphasis is on gradual improvement rather than immediate perfection. This belief, sometimes referred to as a growth mindset, contrasts sharply with the Western tendency to view intelligence as a fixed, immutable trait. In the West, a student who struggles with math might be labeled as not good at math, whereas in East Asian cultures, a temporary setback is seen as a challenge to be overcome through increased effort. Gladwell's analysis reveals that this cultural attitude, this collective willingness to put in the necessary hours, creates a self-reinforcing cycle. The more one practices, the better one becomes, and the better one becomes, the more one is encouraged to continue practicing. In the context of math tests, this means that the skills required for complex problem-solving are honed not by a flash of genius, but by the cumulative effect of persistent, deliberate practice. The role of deliberate practice in math achievement. Building on his earlier discussion of the 10,000-hour rule in another chapter, Gladwell applies the concept of deliberate practice to the realm of mathematics. In East Asian classrooms, practice is not casual or sporadic. It is deliberate, focused, and often grueling. Students are not simply repeating problems to pass time. They are engaged in a systematic process of refining their technique, analyzing their mistakes, and striving for incremental improvement. This methodical approach is reminiscent of the way rice farmers tend to their fields, day after day, season after season, making small adjustments that, over time, yield a bountiful harvest. In mathematics, each problem solved correctly reinforces a student's confidence and skill, while each error provides valuable feedback. This cycle of trial, error, and correction is at the heart of deliberate practice, and it is one of the main reasons why East Asian students achieve such high levels of proficiency in math. Moreover, the educational system in these countries often structures the school day around long hours of focused study. After-school tutoring sessions, additional homework assignments, and regular practice tests are not exceptions but norms. The expectation is clear. Excellence in math is not accidental. It is the product of relentless effort. This emphasis on deliberate practice stands in contrast to some Western educational models, where there is often a greater focus on nurturing creativity or critical thinking skills at the expense of repetitive skill-building. The influence of societal expectations and parental pressure. An integral part of the story Gladwell tells in this chapter is the role of societal expectations and the pressure placed on students by their families. In many East Asian cultures, academic success is not just a personal achievement, it is a family honor. The legacy of hard work, instilled by parents who themselves may have grown up in environments where perseverance was the key to survival, creates an environment where education is viewed as the primary pathway to upward mobility. Parents in these communities often invest enormous time, energy, and resources into ensuring their children excel academically. They set high expectations and provide a structured, disciplined environment at home that mirrors the rigor found in schools. This constant reinforcement that effort leads to success helps solidify the belief that hard work is the most important ingredient in achieving excellence, especially in subjects like math. The result is a virtuous circle. Children internalize the idea that diligence and perseverance are both necessary and rewarding, and they approach their studies with a determination that is passed down from generation to generation. This cultural emphasis on academic achievement ensures that students not only master mathematical concepts, but also develop the resilience to tackle challenging problems without fear of failure. It is a mindset that transforms obstacles into opportunities for learning and growth. Point 7. Comparative perspectives. East Asian versus Western approaches to math education. To fully appreciate the impact of cultural legacy on math achievement, it is useful to compare the approaches taken by East Asian and Western educational systems. In many Western countries, the emphasis is often on fostering creativity, critical thinking, and individual expression. While these are undeniably important skills, they sometimes come at the expense of the kind of rigorous, repetitive practice that is essential for mastering subjects like mathematics. Western classrooms may encourage students to explore multiple solutions to a problem or to engage in open-ended discussions that prioritize innovative thinking over procedural proficiency. While this approach can yield impressive creative results, it may not provide the same level of foundational skill building that comes from the kind of structured, drill-based practice common in East Asia. In contrast, East Asian educational systems tend to place a heavier emphasis on quantitative achievement and on excelling in standardized tests. The rigorous, repetitive practice that students engage in is not meant to stifle creativity, but to build a solid foundation of skills that can later be applied in diverse contexts. This focus on discipline and hard work has produced consistently high performance in international assessments, and it has helped shape a generation of students who view persistence as the key to overcoming even the most daunting challenges. This comparison is not meant to suggest that one system is inherently superior to the other. Rather, it underscores how cultural values and educational practices are deeply intertwined. The success of East Asian students in math is not solely a reflection of their innate abilities. It is also a testament to the cultural legacy of hard work and the structured, deliberate approach to learning that has been honed over centuries. Point 8. Broader implications. Rethinking talent and success in mathematics. Gladwell's exploration of rice paddies and math tests challenges us to reconsider our assumptions about talent and intelligence. It dispels the myth that success in mathematics is an immutable gift bestowed upon a lucky few. Instead, it demonstrates that what we often attribute to natural ability is, in large part, the result of persistent effort, cultural conditioning, and an environment that prizes hard work. This perspective has profound implications for how we view education and how we design systems to nurture talent. If excellence in math, and by extension, in any challenging field, is largely the product of deliberate practice and cultural values, then it follows that these outcomes can be replicated and taught. Rather than assuming that only a select few are born with the ability to excel in math, educators and policymakers might instead focus on creating environments that encourage persistence, provide ample opportunities for deliberate practice, and reinforce the belief that hard work is the most reliable pathway to success. Such a shift in perspective could lead to transformative changes in educational policy, curriculum design, and parental involvement. By recognizing that cultural legacy and sustained effort are key drivers of achievement, we can begin to reimagine education as a process that is accessible to all, not just to those who show early signs of genius. This democratization of success is at the heart of Gladwell's argument and speaks to a broader vision of opportunity and excellence. Point 9. Critiques, counterpoints, and the complexity of cultural influences. Of course, no analysis is complete without acknowledging that cultural explanations are complex and multifaceted. Critics might argue that the emphasis on rice cultivation as a metaphor for mathematical prowess oversimplifies the diverse factors that contribute to academic success. While cultural legacy is undeniably powerful, it interacts with a host of other variables, including socioeconomic status, governmental policies, and individual personality traits. Gladwell is careful to acknowledge that culture is not destiny. The remarkable achievements of East Asian students on math tests cannot be reduced solely to the legacy of rice paddies. There are elements of individual variation, variations in teaching methods, and differences in the broader educational ecosystem that also play critical roles. Nevertheless, by highlighting the role of culture, Gladwell challenges us to look beyond simplistic explanations and to appreciate the intricate tapestry of factors that contribute to educational outcomes. Furthermore, this analysis raises important questions about the balance between fostering discipline and nurturing creativity. While the East Asian approach may yield impressive results in standardized testing, some critics argue that it may come at the expense of creative thinking or the ability to challenge established norms. These debates are central to contemporary discussions about educational reform on both sides of the Pacific, prompting a re-examination of what it truly means to be successful in an ever-changing global landscape. Conclusion: harvesting a legacy of hard work and excellence as we reach the end of rice paddies and math tests. Malcolm Gladwell leaves us with a powerful, if challenging, message: success in mathematics, and indeed, in many other domains, is not a mysterious gift bestowed upon a lucky few, but the outcome of a long, painstaking process of hard work, cultural reinforcement, and deliberate practice. The same values that enabled generations of rice farmers to coax life from stubborn, waterlogged fields have been passed down to modern students, enabling them to tackle complex math problems with determination and precision. This chapter invites us to reconsider the notion of natural talent. It suggests that what many perceive as innate genius is, to a significant degree, the product of an environment that values persistence, careful attention to detail, and the willingness to put in the hard hours, even when the reward is not immediate. For those of us who prize the American ideals of self-reliance and opportunity, this is both a humbling and an inspiring message. It reminds us that while the path to excellence may be arduous, it is also within reach for anyone willing to adopt the mindset of the rice farmer. Patient, resilient, and unyielding in the face of challenge. In rethinking what it means to be good at math, Gladwell not only redefines our understanding of academic success, but also opens the door to a broader conversation about the nature of intelligence, the role of culture, and the transformative power of hard work. It is a call to educators, parents, and policymakers to invest in systems that reward effort over innate ability, and to create environments where every student is given the opportunity to develop their skills to the fullest extent. Ultimately, rice paddies and math tests is a story about the legacy of human endeavor, a reminder that behind every impressive academic achievement lies a history of hard work, cultural wisdom, and a relentless drive to overcome obstacles. As we look to the future of education in an increasingly competitive global landscape, Gladwell's insights offer a blueprint for how to nurture talent in a way that is both inclusive and effective. By embracing the values of persistence, discipline, and collective cultural memory, we can help ensure that the promise of excellence is not the exclusive domain of the few, but a possibility for all. Final Reflections Chapter 8 of Outliers, Rice Paddies and Math Tests, challenges us to see the connection between the humble origins of agricultural labor and the high-flying achievements of modern students. It is a testament to the power of cultural legacy and a reminder that success is often the result of a long, arduous process of practice and perseverance. Through its engaging narrative, the chapter compels us to rethink our assumptions about innate ability and to recognize that hard work, nurtured by a rich cultural heritage, is a critical ingredient in the recipe for excellence. For those who believe in the transformative power of education and the promise of the American dream, this chapter is both an inspiration and a call to action. It urges us to invest in systems that reward effort, to cultivate environments that value precision and persistence, and ultimately, to recognize that the seeds of success are sown in the sweat and determination of everyday work, whether in a rice paddy or a classroom. Imagine being at a crossroads where every step toward achieving the American dream comes with an unspoken price, a sacrifice of part of your heritage, your inner voice, and sometimes even your emotional well-being. Picture a young immigrant or first-generation American who must make a deal with destiny. To succeed in a society that rewards grit and conformity, you must set aside the traditions that once defined you. In Marita's Bargain, Malcolm Gladwell unpacks this poignant, often painful trade-off. It isn't about genetic destiny or raw talent alone. It's about the cultural compromises that immigrant families and their children make in order to thrive in a new land. This chapter challenges us to look at success not merely as an outcome of hard work, but as a complex negotiation between one's inherited culture and the demands of a society that prizes a very different set of values. Introduction. The cultural trade-off at the heart of success, Marita's bargain, introduces us to a critical idea that every success story in America, particularly among immigrant communities, is built upon a series of choices, often sacrifices, made over generations. Gladwell argues that the remarkable achievements of many first- and second-generation Americans are not just a product of individual drive, but also the result of a deeply embedded cultural legacy. This legacy carries with it a bargain, where families learn to exchange parts of their traditional identity for the skills, attitudes, and behaviors that lead to success in a new and demanding environment. The center of this discussion is Marita, a symbolic figure representing the countless individuals who have navigated this cultural negotiation. Marita's story is not just personal. It's emblematic of a broader phenomenon observed in many immigrant communities. To succeed in America's competitive landscape, there is often an implicit agreement: honor your roots, but be willing to adopt new practices and mindsets that better align with American norms. In doing so, you may gain access to opportunities, but you also risk losing touch with the very essence of your heritage. The historical and cultural context of the bargain. To understand Marita's bargain, it is essential to step back and examine the historical context from which this cultural trade-off emerged. Immigrant communities arriving in America, whether from Asia, Eastern Europe, Latin America, or elsewhere, brought with them traditions that were honed over centuries. These traditions were deeply interwoven with their ways of life, in many cases rooted in agrarian labor, communal solidarity, and a set of values that prize perseverance, sacrifice, and a respect for collective well-being. For example, in regions where rice paddies were the lifeblood of the community, a rigorous work ethic and attention to detail were not simply choices. They were survival skills. Over time, these values became enshrined in the cultural identity of the people. When these immigrant families arrived in America, they encountered a society that celebrated a very different ideal: the rugged individualism of the self-made man or woman, where success was often seen as a direct result of personal initiative and bold risk-taking. This clash of values sets the stage for Marita's bargain. On one hand, the immigrant legacy instills an unmatched work ethic and the discipline to pursue excellence relentlessly. On the other, American society often expects individuals to shed aspects of their ethnic identity in favor of assimilation, a move that can mean suppressing the nuances of one's heritage in order to fit into a broader, more homogenized culture. The bargain, then, is a trade-off between preserving the rich tapestry of one's cultural roots and adapting to an environment where success is measured by how well one can blend in, innovate, and compete on a national stage. 3. Marita's story, a personal embodiment of the bargain. At the heart of this chapter is the story of Marita, a composite character representing many who have lived this duality. Marita grows up in a family where the traditions of her homeland are both a source of pride and a heavy burden. In her early years, she is steeped in the rituals, languages, and practices passed down by her parents and grandparents, values that emphasize collective responsibility, humility, and perseverance. Yet as she matures, Marita is confronted with the reality that to succeed in the American educational system, and later in the workforce, she must adopt behaviors and attitudes that sometimes run counter to those ingrained values. For Marita, the bargain is clear. She must learn to balance the expectations of her family and community with the demands of an environment that prizes assertiveness, self-promotion, and a relentless focus on individual achievement. This often means reining in the communal instinct that once defined her and embracing a more competitive, sometimes even cutthroat, approach to life. She learns that to excel academically and professionally, she must work twice as hard not only to master her craft, but also to prove that she can navigate the cultural chasm between her heritage and her adopted home. Throughout her journey, Marita faces internal conflict and external pressures. At home, she is reminded of the rich traditions that celebrate patience, collective well-being, and modesty. At school and later in her career, she encounters a culture that rewards bold self-assertion, risk-taking, and a willingness to stand out from the crowd. These conflicting demands force her to make choices that are both pragmatic and painful, to embrace aspects of American culture while letting go of some parts of her own. Her story is one of resilience, of learning to negotiate a space where two seemingly disparate worlds must coexist within her identity. Point 4. The psychological toll of the bargain. Marita's bargain is not without its costs. One of the most profound insights in this chapter is the psychological toll that such a trade-off can exact. When an individual is forced to suppress integral parts of their cultural identity in order to succeed, the result can be a deep sense of internal conflict. Marita, like many who have made this bargain, experiences moments of alienation, a feeling of being caught between two worlds, never fully belonging to either. This internal struggle manifests in various ways: anxiety over the fear of losing one's heritage, a persistent sense of guilt for abandoning traditional values, and the constant pressure to prove one's worth in an environment that may still view one as an outsider. The burden of this dual identity can lead to burnout and a diminished sense of self-worth, as the individual grapples with the tension between personal authenticity and the demands of assimilation. Gladwell uses Marita's story to illustrate that while the bargain may open doors to academic and professional success, it often comes at a significant emotional cost. The very traits that enabled her to succeed, discipline, sacrifice, and an unyielding drive, can also contribute to a feeling of dislocation. The struggle to reconcile these conflicting aspects of identity is a recurring theme in the immigrant experience, and it challenges the notion that success in America is purely a function of hard work and opportunity. Instead, it reveals the hidden price of achievement, the gradual erosion of one's cultural self. The broader pattern, immigrant sacrifice and the price of assimilation. Marita's experience is not unique. It is a window into a broader pattern observed among immigrant communities across America. Many families arrive with a rich cultural heritage, only to discover that in order to secure a place in the competitive American landscape, they must adapt, and often at great personal cost. This process of adaptation is a double-edged sword. On one side, it fosters a work ethic and a drive to succeed that propel individuals to remarkable heights. On the other, it forces them to leave behind, or significantly alter, the cultural practices that once defined them. Gladwell argues that this immigrant bargain is at the heart of the success of many ethnic groups in America. The sacrifices made by these communities are often invisible to the mainstream narrative of meritocracy. We celebrate the achievements without fully acknowledging the cultural costs paid along the way. In many cases, the traits that enable high performance, such as persistence, meticulousness, and a willingness to put in long hours, are the very same traits that emerge from a culture where hard work is not optional but essential for survival. This broader pattern raises important questions about the nature of success in America. How many of the country's most celebrated achievements are the product of hidden compromises, a balancing act between retaining cultural identity and conforming to the expectations of a new world? And what is the cost, both individually and collectively, of this cultural bargain? Gladwell's exploration in Marita's bargain forces us to confront these questions and to consider whether the price of assimilation is one that is sustainable in the long run.